Welcome back to episode 173 of the Hockey Cards Gong Show podcast. My name is Josh. I'm very, very excited today to be joined with our co-host, our fill-in co-host, the second in a row, Jeremy Lee. Welcome, Jeremy. Happy to
Thank you,
have
Josh. Very happy to be here. What an opportunity this is.
It's an honor for us.
It is. It's an honor for me.
So I was right off the bat. I just want to say I did a lot of my writing yesterday, and the backdrop for me working on this episode was listening to your doubleheader this last Sunday on Sports Cards Live. Very, very much enjoyed it. And I got to tell you, too, I like every one of your shows and I learn a lot from all your guests, but I really appreciate the Jeremy Lee solo shows. So I just wanted to throw that out there right off the bat. It made writing and researching for this show fly by. So I just want to thank you for all the content that you put out there for us in the hobby.
Well, hey, my pleasure. And thank you for sharing that feedback. I appreciate it. I love doing those solo episodes. They are a lot of fun. And so I'm thinking I'm going to try to do those once every 3 months is kind of what I'm aiming for right now. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to keep it up.
Okay. Got a lot to get into today. Very, very excited. We're going to do some unique things that we haven't done on the show, like we did with Phil on our last episode. So I'm looking forward to that. Really quickly, though, before we get started, just a reminder that the Hockey Cards Gong Show podcast is a Patreon podcast. That means we rely on support from listeners like yourself to, well, help us cover our show expenses, continue to produce more, and hopefully better hockey card content, and fund initiatives, even in a small way, to grow the hockey hobby. Right now, you can join our Patreon support level tier. It's at $5 a month. It's on a $1.99. Very easy to do. You can just go to our website here and click on the Become a Patron link. You can go to Patreon's website directly, patreon.com, and search for Hockey Cards Gong Show. There we have our tiers and our support level options there. There's a link in the show description for whatever podcast app you might be listening to us on. There's a link in the YouTube description, and then in our TikTok and Instagram profiles too. Since our last show, Jeremy, we have one new supporter, Abbey Road, 1962. Boy, as a Beatles fan, that I love that name right there. Very, very much appreciate you supporting our show. And with that, want to get into kind of our game plan. This is normally what Troy does, but I'm going to try to do my best Troy right now. So we're going to do something right off the bat that I'm calling Ask the Oracle. I'm sure Jeremy hates it, but Troy and I refer to you as the Oracle because we'll get into that in a minute. But we have the opportunity to interview you where you typically interview everyone else. Then we have Rookie Deep Dive, another exciting addition to that, followed by Hobby News. Some hockey hobby trivia with host Jeremy Lee. I haven't looked at any of the questions, so I'm going to probably look like an idiot, which is fine. Nothing new there. Then we have new product releases, a PWCC Weekly preview, which is a treat having Jeremy on the show. And then we're going to end. We both have personal pickups to end the show. So excited about that as well. Okay. Ask the Oracle. So here's why we call you the Oracle. Not only do you have a ton of hobby knowledge, you are a very positive and open presence in the hobby, which is amazing. I've told this story before, probably to you, but when Troy and I started, you were very open to us and very welcoming, and not, maybe seen us as not that we are competition, but seen us like that, and you helped us actually. And I thought, boy, that was an amazing thing for you to do, and also I think indicative of just the hobby in general. And so we've tried to pay that forward to other content producers as well. And so I just want to give you a lot of kudos there, because I really believe that in your heart of hearts that you want the hobby to grow and you want to support other people, and that's part of the reason why I think you've elevated yourself to where you are. And that's reason one why we call it the Oracle. The other one, I actually looked up the dictionary, Jeremy, on dictionary.com. And here's what it says. An Oracle says, a person that delivers authoritative, wise, or highly regarded and influential pronouncements. And I've done a show with you now on the PWCC Weekly Hockey Watch Party, and you definitely do that every week. And so that's why we call it the Oracle. Since you're here, I have a number of big picture questions. Now, you like I said, you typically interview everyone else. So now's my time. Now I'm flipping the script here on Jeremy Lee. And I'm going to ask you some of the kind of the questions that I think about that I'm really interested to get your perspective. So are you game for that?
Yeah, let's do it. It's always fun to be on the other side. So although we are co-hosting, you've made it clear to me that this is a co-host
Yeah.
sort of endeavor today, but I'm bring it on, Josh. It's always fun to sit down with you, no matter who's asking who the questions.
Okay. Yeah. Push back wherever you want. Okay. We often categorize the hobby by eras, right? So I think like the junk wax era or the Crosby Ovechkin kind of the mid 90s where we have all the inserts. 10 years or so from now, Jeremy, how do you think we'll categorize or describe today as an era?
Yeah, it's always fun to look forward into the future and then kind of look back, especially with the experience that we've had looking back on the eras that have already passed us. So a couple things come to mind to me, Josh. The first one is we have to name it. So maybe 10 years from now, we'll call this, there's a few different options. Maybe we'll call it the post-pandemic era, similar to the way we call the pre-war era pre-war. The war was a
Sure.
big worldwide thing that happened, just like the pandemic was. So maybe we'll call it post-pandemic. Maybe we'll call it the plethora of inserts and parallels era. Maybe we'll call it the grading era, or maybe we'll call it the fanatics era. Something that
Yeah.
encompasses all of those. I think I kind of think something that captures one or more of those sorts of ideas, I think, is what we'll look back on it upon. Maybe we'll call it the post Panini era is another option.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, tough to really nail it down now, but I think there's a lot of options, and I'm excited to see what we do, what we the greater hobby kind of by consensus does end up calling it.
I think that's there's a lot of good thoughts there. And your response makes me think a little bit. Maybe what I would add to that, Jeremy, as some maybe additional ideas are I feel like there's a lot of instability right now, but not in a bad way necessarily. It's just sort of it's not very stable, the hobby, but it's like an innovation era, or you think back like to the industrial age, right? Where to draw a weak probably comparison, but where you had all this innovation that was dramatically changing the landscape. And I think there's a lot of innovation in our hobby right now, and it's really hard to predict what's going to happen going forward. And the whole like Bedard thing is a great example of that. Like I say this all the time, but I've given up in the past year predicting anything related to Connor Bedard. Like if people say, "Oh, his young guns will never be, like would never be $2,000." Like, well, I don't know. I mean, his Team Canada cards some are selling for 10,000. So, or what his PSA 10 pop count's going to be, or anything like that. I don't know. I just feel like there is just so much. I don't know if unpredictability. It seems like a negative, but I don't mean it that way. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it certainly. I think Bedard throws a whole curveball into where we would otherwise be, just because I think all of us are wondering, okay, if his cards sell for super high, which the ones that have come out already are selling super high relative to similar players of past years in the same sets. So the question is, do those super high values, are they going to come down or even crash, or are they going to bring up the values of the other players around him? The comparable players, the Austin Matthews, the Connor McDavids, and so forth. So that I think provides some instability, and it's a bit of a shock to the system when you see his young gun come out, right out of the gate and sell for over $1,000 raw. We
Mhm.
hadn't seen that before. So I think that kind of speaks to the instability that you're referring to. And I think it does, and it can cause for a little bit of discomfort for some people, even those people buying these early Bedard cards for big prices. There has to be some nervousness involved with those final decisions to make that bid or make that purchase. So, but yeah, we'll see. Well, only time will tell. But you know what else tells is history and experience. And I mean, I think that of those two alternatives, are the Bedard cards gonna rising tide lift all boats, bring up the values of other cards, or will they come down? I lean towards the latter. I think they will come. They have come down already. I think they will continue to. They'll find a bit of equilibrium, and then they'll just they'll ebb and flow with the cycles within the hobby.
So you've often mentioned and told people that you've been a lifelong hobbyist and a lifelong collector. Is there any point in your total experience in the hockey hobby that's similar to right now? where you can, or is this just its own kind of beast?
It really is its own beast. But because of where we are in 2024, and then we have this generational talent entering the space. I think back to the 05-06 hockey card season where we had the double rookie class after the lockout year. The anticipation for that, I remember it very clearly being, on the show floor at the expo, being at the LCS here on trader nights, and just how excited we were. Crosby and Ovechkin, you had two number one overall draft picks, highly touted, like very highly touted number one overall draft picks coming out in the same rookie class. It was very exciting. And the other thing it reminds me of is Eric Lindros in 1990
Yeah.
when his card come out. We had Score enter the hockey card world along with Pro Set, and all of a sudden, an Upper Deck, of course, and that was exciting too. Followed up very closely by Alexander Daig, who was as hyped, it feels, as Bedard is, just with without social media and all that. So we had that Alexander Daig hype. It was again, Josh, it was as strong that I recollect as Bedard is now. But he of course was a big bust. And my kind of prayers over the past few months have been that Bedard is what he's touted to be, so that all these people spending all this money and the infrastructure in the hobby, the LCSs and the breakers and the card companies, wouldn't lose their shirt over this. So that's I think experience is really important to draw on when we see things like this, especially young gun values. I mean, I've been watching young gun values, really closely ever since the Crosby year. I was watching.
Yeah.
I had a shop in the early '90s. I remember the Berets and the Fedorovs as well. But since the Crosby year, when young guns really became the important rookie card, you can see year over year those top few prospects in the set, the card number 201 and card number 451 always sell for more than anybody else for the most part at the beginning. And then it just takes a bit of time, and they do always come down in value. And then they might go back up later, but that's just kind of the way it goes. So new people who just came in and were buying Bedard young guns for $1,000, I hope they can afford to wait for that to hopefully bounce back over the next several years.
Totally agree with you. And I've thought a little bit about, separating the players from the eras a little bit. Like, what if instead of Bedard being a rookie this year, it was Crosby and Ovechkin in 2024? Right? The same players, the same promise, the same pedigree, having essentially two Bedards.
Yeah.
The hobby would totally lose its mind. Okay, I want to move on to the next question because we got a lot to get to. So, Jeremy, if you could change one thing and one thing only about the hockey hobby, what would it be?
Well, I think the obvious answer is I would find a way to squeeze my way into Jason Mashura's job, and I'd be the president of Upper Deck. I think that's a dream job for any hockey card collector. But seriously, Jason, I think, does a great job. He's a smart, nice guy. I've had him on my show a couple times. So I don't want to take his job. But if there's one thing I could fix, and focusing in on the hockey card segment of the hobby, this is the Hockey Cards Gong Show, of course, and I'm the co-host tonight, so I'm going to focus on hockey. I think what I'd like to see happen is I'd like Upper Deck and the NHL teams, the NHL, the PA, whoever it is, work with the teams closer, work closer with those teams to get game used rookie jerseys, even if they're from exhibition games. I mean, that would be good enough for me. Get those to Upper Deck in time so that they can send them out to their printing vendors so that they can be inserted into all the patch products, with the ultimate one being the cup at the end of the day, at the end of the hockey card season. And then we'd have game used rookie patches. That would be a game changer for me as a collector. I would go back. I don't collect RPAs right now because I have really very little to zero interest in a patch that wasn't used in an NHL game. So I would, be very expensive, but I'd like to be able to collect RPAs again. And that's the only way I would, is if Upper Deck and the teams work closer together to get those jerseys to Upper Deck in time. Because right now, logistically, it's just impossible for them to do it with the way things are set up.
Yeah, that's been a big consternation for me too. And in fairness to them, of course, we don't know all the logistics and all the reasons, and they're beholden to third-party print facilities. But what we've observed in the past year, which I think is putting pressure on them today, and I actually think we're going to see the result when we look at some of the newly released SP Game Used gallery or cards that were released by Upper Deck in their gallery, that we've seen Fanatics come in, and because they are very, very tight already with all the leagues, they're the uniform manufacturers for baseball, and they have now the sports cards license. They're able to pretty easily put a patch on a rookie's baseball jersey and have them playing the same game, and then take the patch off and put that into a card. And logistically, they have their hands on every step of the process, so it becomes really easy to do that. And then they've obviously too, on top of that, are able to have a lot shorter lead time on printing. So like when we talk to whether it be Tony or Billy at Upper Deck a lot, they always mention that like when we're talking about series 2 that just came out a few weeks ago, Billy was done with that like a long time ago because they have to have these done so far in advance. And so if Fanatics does something that puts a little competitive pressure on them, maybe to do a net cord card like an SP Game Used or something like that, it's like, are we not going to see that for 2.5 years in the 2026 set? And so I really agree with you that they've got to find a way to be a little bit more on demand with how they're able to produce, maybe not the entire set, but be able to react a little bit quicker to changes in the marketplace and innovation.
Yeah. Oh, I agree, and you bring up a great point what Topps is doing, and that's exactly what I'm thinking of, and so the fact that Topps is doing it proves it can be done if the right relationships are in place. So
Hmm.
hopefully they get there. Hopefully they get there because I mean when Upper Deck Premier Collection first came out in what I guess that was the 01-02 season. All it had were autographs in the packs and a couple autographed rookie cards. So I think those were the first autographed rookies we ever saw. By the time they got to 02-03, they introduced the RPA for the first time in hockey.
Yeah.
And it was great. I was blown away because I was so fixated on what a rookie card had to be that, well, a rookie card can't have an autograph. I never heard of that before, so it obviously can't have it. And then you drop the blinders and you realize, well, no, a rookie card can have an autograph on it. And then wait a second, now a patch card? You mean that can be more than just an insert? It can actually be a rookie card too. That was kind of a real eye-opening moment in the hobby for me back in like 2002-3. So yeah, I mean, I would love if they could figure that out with those patches being game used, because that's what they should be for me. I think, I think that's what originally they were intended to be. And then I think out of necessity or convenience or for financial reasons, they started using more and more, non-game used. And the whether it's photo shoot or event used, to me, if it's not on the player's back on the ice during a game against a legitimate opponent, and I don't even care if it's an exhibition game, it just totally loses its meaning for me. So I'd like to see it go that way.
I think to piggyback on what you're saying too, to some degree, Upper Deck has been and not just Upper Deck, but probably all the manufacturers, a little bit of a victim of their own success in these endeavors, so that you introduce the RPA and now everyone wants one. You introduce rookie auto cards and nobody wants to buy SP Authentic without 2 autos in a box. Well, what do we want as collectors? Do we want you can't have the Wayne Gretzky auto being out of 3,000, right? You want that to be rare and scarce, but then nobody wants to get a who is this player autograph either. So it's a very delicate balancing act that I think they have, and that's another thing too that I think about from like a long-term perspective for the hobby is finding a way to protect scarcity.
Yeah,
Is
agree.
like real scarcity of the best cards, and don't yeah, there's going to be a tonnage or volume demand that the hobby has, but we need to protect the untouchables
Mm,
and keep those cards special, because that's what really drives so much of the interest in the hobby are getting to those cards in attaining those grails. And both of us I know have commented a lot over the past years, sort of like how PMGs have been maybe a little bit overprinted, or do we need to have jambalayas every year? How many 101s should we have of a player? And not easy questions to answer, of course, because Upper Deck is generally, I think, good and smart people, but but nonetheless, I think that there are problems that need to be, or challenges that need to be addressed.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I think one of the issues that they deal with, and the reason why they keep on making Gretzky cards is because, well, Gretzky's the, best of all time, and the hobby has evolved into a hit based hobby, a hit based products that are all hit based, and like you said, everybody wants to pull the Gretzky out of their box, and they're very happy when they do, or the Crosby, or the Matthews, or McDavid, or whomever, the stars. But when you hit a common auto or patch, the group breakers will make a big fuss out of it because that's their job. They have to get excited over those things, but they're not that exciting. I mean, it's kind of funny listening to someone get excited for a player that you haven't even heard of, and it happens all the time right now because the rookie class, there's so many rookie cards in the cup. You're getting 80 rookie cards in the each year or so, I guess,
Yeah.
depending on how big. Young guns, you're getting 100, you're getting 100 plus young guns now with extended every year. There aren't that many good players coming to the league each year to fill up those spots. So a lot of times those so-called hits aren't really hits. They're just not, they're not exciting cards. I don't want to say they're garbage, because every person depicted on a card is a human who made the NHL, who plays professional hockey for a living. But we don't care. The hobby doesn't care. The hobby wants the best, and sometimes only the best players to come out of their packs or their group break spots or their boxes and cases. So it's a tough situation. And that's why I think, Upper Deck continues to add insert sets. And then they also continue to ride what's worked in the past, whether it's tribute RPAs or acetate young guns, going back to the well, to those old designs, of course, PMGs being a great example, and jambalayas. But the problem is that, yes, it's good for them short term because it sells the product, but the people buying it and owning them long term now have to handle and deal with the decreasing in secondary market value. But then I think to myself, Josh, well, who cares about secondary market value? You're collecting. You're collecting. You're not going to sell these cards anyway. Well, the hobby's evolved to where, most, I don't know how many, but I'll say many collectors are also, people who move cards around. I don't want to say flippers or dealers, but most collectors have their trader boxes or their inventory. And, it's just become, it's become something that's really hard to balance for everybody, Upper Deck and us as consumers.
Well, I think no matter how much of a purist you consider yourself to be, and truly maybe in your heart of hearts, I don't ever judge people for their motives, but I do know a little bit about. I've been in marketing for a very long time. I know a little bit about buying psychology and consumer psychology, and it's not an accident that the most expensive cards are the most desired, right? In every, I think I can't imagine there's a collector alive that doesn't value the value of their own collection to some degree. Now, they may not be moving them or flipping them, but we're all interested. We like it when our cards are worth a lot of money. And so yeah, and that is kind of evolving. And a guy like, having a generational talent like Bedard is a little bit of gasoline on that fire too, because we're seeing tons and tons of cards move. We're still into March, and I think so. I've mentioned this a lot, but we've tracked players that sell the most cards every month for 2 years, and Wayne Gretzky has been number one for 2 straight years. Probably the top end, most cards sold in a month between 4 and 5,000. As of right now, there'll probably be 16,000 Connor Bedard cards sold this month.
And how many of those are on Slab Sharks?
Yeah, yeah, all of them. Good for them though, because very, very good there. And so, yeah, it is. You got to protect scarcity because that protects values, and whether or not you flip or you hoard, I think that that's meaningful to people. So it just is. Okay.
Agree.
Is it best for the hobby, Jeremy, or does it hurt the hockey hobby to have one licensed card and you could manufacturer, and you could expand this to, because there's a uh, single license holder for basically everything now. But
Yeah. I mean, I think the popular answer is it hurts the hobby to only have one licensee because it stifles competition. But we really don't know what we don't know, and sometimes you want to be careful what you wish for. Last time it happened, it led us immediately into the junk wax era, and then the hobby crashed right in like
yeah,
'93. It was dead for a few years, and then it really didn't revive for in hockey, at least until the '04, '05, I mean, '05, '06 season. There were, you had the Rick Nash and Jason Spezza years there in '02, '03. Yeah, you had Fleury and Zetterberg the next year. We had some exciting years in there, but really the hobby was very slow. I think as a result of all those companies competing and just flooding the market. So, if they did award another license, then you have to think, well, what happens? Does that now double the amount of products hitting the market each year? Because unless they're going to have the licensing fees, like slice them in half for Upper Deck and the new licensee, whoever that may be, Upper Deck can't reduce the set count that they have. People would say, well, they should be limited to 5 sets a year and have 4 manufacturers or whatever that math works out to. Well, that doesn't work. It
Mhm.
works, but then people lose their jobs, and the quality is going to go down simply because they need the revenue to pay the licensing fees. And so if Upper Deck, I don't think they can reduce the set count. I wouldn't see the licensing fees going down. I don't know I don't know for sure, but I can't imagine that the league would reduce the license fees. I think if anything, maybe they reduce it a little bit, like 10%, and bring on another licensee, and now they're up to 180% of before overall. So now they bring on another license. Does that oversaturate the market? I think it does. Then what happens? Well, who knows? I mean, the other thing to consider is all the brand equity that is kind of given to the Cup and Upper Deck flagship and SPA
Yeah.
and all the other great sets. All of a sudden people are going to be looking elsewhere. And what happens then to all those historical sets? Are they going to lose any luster? I mean, they shouldn't, because they didn't have competition up until when the second license was awarded. But I wonder what would happen to the historical
Mhm.
products and the cards from there. So all that said, I think it would have to be done very well. I don't know that it would be. I don't know that the NHL and the PA would give it the attention it deserves to work with the licensees to make sure that we don't run into another junk wax era followed by a dead card era. I hope that doesn't happen. So all that said, it's I sound like I'm saying no, one license is good, but really, on the other hand, we do know that competition breeds innovation, it sparks creativity, and I'm certainly not against that. So my vote would be for, yeah. I mean, I first of all, I do love Upper Deck's products. I have for, what do we have, 35 years now. Loved Upper Deck's products. I think they make the highest quality card out there. I'm not saying that every card comes out of every box without any dings or anything. I'm saying that the look and feel of their cards, to me, is just far and above what I'm seeing from Panini and Topps, as far as just quality of construction and design as well. So yeah, I mean, does it help or hurt the hobby? The hobby's pretty healthy right now. I mean, look what's happened under the single licensee era across all sports. Hobby's doing pretty well right now, I think, overall.
Mhm.
So maybe it's better, but I don't know. I'm not going to give you one easy answer to that, Josh.
Why, as I'm listening to you and kind of reflecting on even our conversation or answers to other questions so far, as I think we've it's a game of trade-offs, and we've kind of seen those. On one hand, you've spoken already, I think, very eloquently about how Fanatics is leveraging a close relationship with the MLBPA and the MLB to create some really cool cards. Having multiple manufacturers probably makes it harder to have a close relationship. But then we're also referencing too that Upper Deck might be feeling some competitive pressure based on all the innovation. that a company like Fanatics is doing. And I think the fear to me of sort of a exclusive licensing agreement is just stagnant innovation. And then that's, I think, kind of a threat right now too. But I think actually Upper Deck is cognizant of that. And I do agree with you that, listen, there's definitely ways to be nitpicky and certain legitimate complaints, but in my opinion, I think Upper Deck does a pretty good job too. And
Well, yeah, and I guess, here's an interesting question, which is, does the competition need to come directly within the sport, or do Panini and
Mhm.
Topps provide some competition to Upper Deck for collector dollars? And I think there is competition there. I would think that basketball, football, baseball are feeling a little bit of the Bedard mania, because so
Mhm.
much money. I mean, just the price of Series 2 is so much more than ever before. That's coming out of collector pockets. I think we're seeing more non-traditional hockey consumers come to hockey from basketball, football, baseball than ever before. That money's coming from somewhere. It's a zero-sum game at the end of the day. So that money's coming out of Panini and Topps's coffers. It may be a drop in the bucket, but there's something there. But I think my real point to this is, does the competition need to come directly from other hockey products, or does the fact that Topps and Panini are innovating in their sports with their licenses, does that provide any competition for Upper Deck? And if not just competition, is it providing any inspiration or ideas for them to copy and to utilize in hockey? And that's better than nothing. That's better than than Upper Deck having all sports, or one company having all sports.
Well, if we think that the hockey hobby has elevated itself out of the basement a little bit and is more on the main floor with the other sports, and kind of, and I hope it is. I definitely think that there's a lot of positives right now to the momentum of hockey, that I can buy that argument that you're playing, is that it is overall sports card dollars. What I was thinking of is that I'm sure like the best comparison in what you were kind of just saying is like between like football and basketball or something like that, right? If
Mm.
if all of a sudden basketball cards are amazing and football cards are lagging behind innovation, that more of the collector dollars might funnel there because it's a better product. And so I definitely think you made a good point there. Okay, my little follow up question to that is, so putting your uh, Oracle hat. What do Oracles wear? Uh,
Yeah, they wear hats. Yeah,
they wear hat. Okay. 10 years from now, does Upper Deck still have the NHL and NHLPA licenses?
I think so. I think they do. I think they have such a good relationship with those organizations right now. I think they do. But if I were to hear any time between tomorrow and 10 years from now that Fanatics somehow swooped in and got it, I wouldn't really be I would be surprised and I would be disappointed, unless they took Upper Deck's people and brands with them, because I think those people have a lot to do with the brands, and I like the brands. So, um, yeah, I think that Upper Deck will maintain it. Another question we often get is, will Fanatics buy Upper Deck? And it's been made pretty clear by people who, unless they're just lying through their teeth, that Upper Deck is not for sale and is not going to be for sale. Now, things eventually could change. 10 years it's a long time, but it's also not that long. So I my guess today here in March of 2024 is that yes, Upper Deck will have those licenses for the next 10 years.
Everything's for sale for the right price, right?
Well,
Yeah, yeah.
you'd think so, but the right price might not make sense to the buyer.
100%, 100%.
These aren't
Okay,
John, these aren't sports cards. And it's funny, I say that kind of tongue in cheek, because I recently, and I'm going to show it when we do mail day, I recently made a trade with somebody who made me an offer on a card that was not available. It was not available. I
yeah.
got it made an offer I couldn't refuse.
Well, that's what
I
I'm
had
saying.
to take it. And the reason I said, well, this, with Upper Deck being for sale, that's not sports cards, that's a business, even though it's a sport card business, because with sports cards, you will sometimes make an offer to somebody that would be ridiculous to anybody else, even to the person that has the card you're offering it to. But it's the card. These are cards, and we love to get our cards. And sometimes the price is not an obstacle for some people, or the trade
Mhm.
value. So anyway, that was fun.
Makes
Thought that was
sense.
funny.
All right, this next one I'm really excited for. If there is a person in this world that knows more about the 1979 OPG or Topps Wayne Gretzky rookie card than you, I want to meet that person because I'd probably pass out because I just wouldn't believe it. I have seen you dissect that card to the utmost detail, and it's a treat every time you do it. We're going to get to do it a little bit later. And so, my question related to this card is, will we ever see a third, either OPG or Topps PSA 10 Gretzky rookie again? And would that be good or bad for the hockey hub if that happened?
I mean, my quick answer is no, we're not going to see one, but my logical hat says, I mean, there's a lot of years ahead still, there's more future years than past years with that card being in existence. So, I guess that also implies that PSA will be around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I think they will be. They seem to have a pretty good foothold on the hobby right now. So, I'm going to go along the lines of no for this discussion. I'm going to say that no, we won't see another one. I just can't see them giving out a 10 because I've seen lots of 9s, Josh, that are I've even seen some 8s, I would say, that are nicer than each of those OPG PSA 10s. So the fact that there are already nicer Gretzky rookies in PSA 9 slabs than the ones that are in the 10s, it really leads me down the path of truly believing in my heart of hearts that there is and that they are exercising population control. And so for that, for those reasons, I don't think we're going to see another one for a long time. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think PSA is going to do that. I think they are exercising population control. That's my true feelings. I could be completely wrong on that. I hope I am. I hope I'm wrong, but that's where I fall on that.
I kind of think it's a good thing. I think it's part of the mystique of the hockey hobby that our biggest grail, our card of cards, there's only 2 of each brand. Right. I kind of think of, and you would know more about like the 86 Fleer Jordan than I do, but it feels like the pop is keeps creeping up on that. Am I correct in that? In that and then there's the whole star thing there too, but it's like the mystique of that card has flattened a little bit. Is that a good word or way to put
Yeah.
it in the last couple of years where, what hasn't changed is there's 2 OPG Gretzky rookies and that's it.
Yeah, with the Jordan, I mean, it's been offered for sale several times a month for a few years now, or so.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I just saw they just added another 10 just was graded either today or yesterday to the Jordan population. So I think it's over 320 now. Maybe it's 322 or 323, something like that. But I didn't answer earlier. Would it be good or bad if there was a third 10 Topps or OPG Gretzky added to the population? And I think it would be good. Here's why I think it would be good, because I think it would bring a lot of attention. I think it would bring attention to hockey, to the hockey segment of the hobby from within the overall hobby. And I also think that it would bring more attention to the Gretzky. That would be newsworthy. Like there's only been 2 of them there for so long that it would be very exciting. You add, because you think about it, one more increases the population by 50%. One more Michael Jordan, PSA 10 86 Fleer, increases the population by less than 1/3%. Less than 1/3 versus 50% increase in the population. It's also, people would be talking about who owns those other 2, who owns the existing 2, and how do they feel about it? That's going to be interesting content. And then the most interesting thing would be to line up pictures of all 3 of them together. And let's see, is this new 10 way nicer than the other 2? And that is also one of the reasons why I don't think they're going to put another one in a 10s holder, because it almost forces PSA to admit that the other 2 10s aren't really as nice as this one, because we'll see it with our naked eye. And then you're going to see, because all the 9s that are nicer than those 2 10s, well, there's no grading report. You don't know why it got the grade it did. So you really can't you really can't say anything about it as a collector, as a hobbyist. You can't look and say, well, no, this is a 10 PSA. And I also wonder how many of those 9s have been resubbed over and over again. Like, is the PSA 9
Sure.
pop count on their population report on the website, on PSA's website? How overstated is that? How many 9s have been resubbed over and over again to become a 10? I'm guessing it's overstated quite a bit, which should be really a good thing for those 9s, because there's fewer of them than population report. That's a whole other episode, Josh. But population reports are so misleading,
So fraught
because
with errors.
because of the resub game. It's
Mhm.
it's a bit of a racket that way.
All right, surprise follow-up question, but I want to ask it because you have such a well-rounded view, probably a lot from doing like the PWCC premiere show for so long now. And you got to adjust for the era, kind of. There's a lot more printing advancements today than there was in 1979. But do you think the 1979 Gretzky is the most intricate hockey card ever, or sports card ever produced?
I think there are some others. There's some pre-war baseball cards that have different things going on. Big cards. T206s, which would apply to our C series cards, and our Imperial Tobacco RC, right? Or it would apply to those too. But it's for being such an iconic card, it might be the most intricate of all the iconic cards. The top 10 iconic cards in the whole hobby, simply because of the way that it was manufactured, the sloppy nature upon which they were manufactured back in the day. Now, what are the other most iconic cards? Well, the Wagner, there's only 70 of them, so we'll give that a pass. And then the Jordan rookie, as iconic as it was printed pretty standard. The cuts are all over the place, and then you got the 52 Topps Mickey Mantle, pretty intricate as well. It's got a few different things going on, whether it's the surface, the two different versions of it. There's two different variants of the 52 Topps Mantle. Not everybody knows that. There's only one variant of the O-Pee-Chee Gretzky. Well, even that's arguable, because you got the ones with the blue lines on the back and the ones without the blue lines on the back. But to me, that's still from the same print run. So I don't really.
Well, and I guess the reason why I asked that question is, having watched you go through these cards probably 50 times now, probably at least 40, and seeing how, like I said, intricate they are, and how these little black lines and all the plates and how everything, it feels like a miracle that anyone would be a 10. The more you learn about this, so you really understand why there's two 10s, because it's like, holy cow, it was sloppy to begin with. And then this card is like so many fine lines, and everything has to match up perfectly. And then to have good corners and edges to boot, right? That like I said, it seems like a miracle anytime one comes out what we would consider perfect. Okay, next question. What's the biggest threat to the overall health of the hobby, in your opinion?
I mean, the easy answer, and I think it's the right one, is the macro economy. The political climate around the world, interest rates. These things have an impact. The pandemic was. I don't know how much of a threat it was. It might eventually be looked at like, oh, that was a threat, but now it's it just kind of drove a lot of new people to the hobby. But I would say just macro worldwide issues, number one, I think, is the biggest threat. I don't think the hobby is under threat, really, outside of something happening that we can't predict, like a pandemic, because it's been around for 140 years. It's not going anywhere. You see the hobby is dead. You see those things out, on YouTube thumbnails, and that hobby's never been dead. Even in the dead era, it wasn't dead. There were still people that kept it alive. So I think the more likely, though, threat to the hobby has to do with the fact that there's so much money in the hobby now. We are seeing more and more bad actors, and we're seeing counterfeit cards. We're seeing counterfeit slabs, and it's not only when I say we are seeing, if we're seeing them, then we know they're counterfeit. But what about the unknown counterfeits? It's the unknown counterfeits that really scare me. and the resulting, when it starts out as an unknown counterfeit until somebody figures it out. Now it shifts from the unknown to the known. While it's unknown, it's kind of like, well, we're ignorant anyway, so what do we know? But once an unknown counterfeit becomes known, and there's got to be some out there right now, especially with all the money and attention on the hobby, then what happens? Then all of a sudden, we are going to see a decrease in collectors' faith in the hobby and in their own cards and in some of the historical cards and the overall market, because you're going to see new people hearing about it and they're going to get scared to get in because I don't know, am I buying a counterfeit or am I buying a real card? So, and the slabs as well. I've heard stories about PSA slabs, like they're super easy, I've heard, to knock off. And that's very scary for me and everyone else that has significant collections in those slabs, and significant collections that might even have significant value. So I think the biggest threat is fraud and the bad actors and counterfeits. I think that's a serious
there's
threat.
a huge knowledge tax that I think most people pay when they come into I'll give you an example. You haven't left in 40 years, and so you've probably avoided this. But when I got back into collecting a number of years ago, I grew up idolizing Michael Jordan. I was a kid of the 90s, and I was there for every championship game he played. I remember all those games. I remember jumping in front of the TV, like, as a little kid. And so when I got adult money, I bought a couple in-person auto cards that had certificates of authenticity where I could go on a website and verify them, and they were 100% fake. And I have them today. I spent more than $1,000 on each of them, and I'll never sell them because I don't it's ethically wrong to do. So they just kind of sit there as my reminder of that's the tax. And I stuck with it, but I could have easily quit the hobby and been like, this is dumb.
Hmm.
There's no way to, I just got scammed out of a bunch of money and bought something that I thought was authentic that isn't. And so I totally agree with you there that, I think a lot of people have those stories. And then the question is how many people stick with it versus just quit. And that's part of the reason why we started our 101 series, why, really a purpose of our show. And I know it's a big purpose of what you do is to try to bring some light into like knowing what I know now about a Wayne Gretzky rookie, going back to that for a second, largely because of you. Thank God I haven't bought one to this point because had I tried to buy one, I would have not even known what I was looking at. And that's maybe that's part of what I don't know how people view that, but there is whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, there's the unscrupulous actors can scare a lot of people away. I think you're right.
And that my answer may not be the biggest threat, but that's what came to mind for me. I'm curious what other people would say about that, but that's what comes to mind for me. So and all you can do is get yourself as informed as you can, ask questions, don't be shy about it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Last question. And I asked Karin this question. I'm going to ask you it. And I want to tell you my purpose a little bit first is that as an American, I'm really fascinated by just sort of how intertwined hockey is into the zeitgeist of Canada, into the culture. And it's different here. Of course, we know that. And so I kind of look at you guys from that perspective and a little bit of fascination. And so my question is, like I said, I asked it to Karn, who has more to lose this upcoming postseason, Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Austin Matthews has more to lose this year. I think Leafs fans, Toronto Maple Leafs fans are impatient. They get very frustrated with their team, and I mean, it's understandable. Their team has given them a lot to be frustrated about for decades now, so I get it. But they are impatient, and they can be unrelenting as well as a fan base, and not that maybe a little bit more than some others, just because they have such high expectations, and I actually admire them for having such high expectations. I think that's a great thing. But I think the hobby is just so enamored with Connor McDavid and has been for so long that he can kind of coast a little bit hobby wise for a couple, maybe up to 2 more years before the hobby says, okay, Connor, it's time to win a Stanley Cup, or else you're going to go down as, you're going to be a Hall of Famer, there's no doubt, but you're going to go down as a Hall of Famer that could never get it done. And that's why, that's why for me, Sidney Crosby is the GOAT of our generation, of the year 2000 forward. Anyway, I mean, Mario Lemieux is still in my generation, and Gretzky a little bit too, or maybe he's a bit older than me, but I would say Matthews has more to lose because of the patience that might run out in Toronto. Now it's, his goal scoring run here is huge. That's amazing. And as good as that is, those fans, they want the Stanley Cup and nothing short of it. So I think the hobby overall will be more patient with Connor. Oiler fans can also be more patient. They've got Stanley Cups. They've got Stanley Cups in the last 60 years. Toronto just doesn't. So they've been appeased along the way a little bit. So I think Matthews, and then the other factor is that Matthews is an American playing in, the hobby hotbed of Toronto, Canada's hobby hotbed or hockey hotbed. So what happens if he doesn't win and then they end up trading him, or he leaves? Tavares left New York Islanders just like that. He just left to go home to Toronto. Maybe Matthews does something similar. Hopefully he doesn't leave his team high and dry, but like Tavares did, but maybe he goes home to Arizona or somewhere in the States. Well, that would be a hobby killer for him if he went to Arizona. I mean, his cards they'd lose 80% value overnight, I think, if he got traded to Arizona, or a handful of other teams too. Basically, any non-original six team, I think, and plus a couple of others would kill his value. So, whereas Connor McDavid, I don't see, if he got traded to, say, Arizona or some other, like Carolina or Tampa or Dallas or whichever those teams down there, Florida teams, I don't think it would have the same impact because he's Connor McDavid. He's been the league's best player, technically speaking, for so long. But they both want and need Stanley Cups to cement themselves. If they want to get into the discussion of that kind of the line that I always mention, Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Sidney Crosby. Those are fixed. Those are set forever. Does Connor McDavid want to be next? He wants to. Do we want him to be next? Yes, we do. And even though he plays for my favorite team's bitterest rival, I want to see Connor McDavid win a Stanley Cup because I put the hobby ahead of my own fan interest.
That's surprising. Karn's answer of Matthews surprised Troy and I, and yours would surprise Troy too. And not that we disagree with it. It's just interesting because I look at McDavid and it just feels like a little bit of an inflection point to me. On one hand, he's still relatively young. On the other hand, it's his 9th season. And I can't think of a GOAT in the hobby in any sport that's never won a championship. Will he be like Dan Marino if he looked at from like a hobbyist perspective, if he never wins a championship? He's such a big deal that it's kind of a very unique circumstance in a way where the biggest star of the hobby really hasn't even come close to winning the biggest prize. And there's, I guess, maybe some NFL quarterback, like you look like Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow, maybe would be similar circumstances. Okay, well, one quick follow-up question, just again to understand the mind of a Canadian hockey fan here. Do you think the Canadians would rather have a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup between now and the Olympics, or Canada with NHL players returning, win gold medal in 2026?
Oh, that's a good question, Josh. What would Canadians rather? A Canadian team, I think Canadians would rather. Oh man, I think Canadians would rather win the Olympics than have a Canadian team win.
Are you guys afraid of the red, white, and blue?
Yes, no? I'm very afraid of the red, white, and blue in the Olympics. I actually wouldn't bet. I do not expect Canada to win gold at the Olympics based on the preliminary kind of rosters that we've seen, preliminary put up by news outlets, what those are going to look like. The Americans are so deep at all positions. I saw a clip on Instagram or a reel yesterday about the Canadian goalies that are going to be the top 5 Canadian goalies. There's not one on there that I think is qualified to represent Canada in the Olympics. Aiden Hill was number 1. Number 2 is Tristan Jarry. I'm not saying these are bad goalies, but we're used to having Patrick Waugh and Martin Brodeur and Carey Price. The guys that were the best in the league when they were playing. Now, what is Aiden Hill? Is he the 10th best goalie in the NHL? 15th? Like he's lucky he plays on the Vegas is a powerhouse, an offensive powerhouse. He's not the best. I'm scared, Josh. I'm scared. That's why the other reason why I said Olympics versus a Stanley Cup is because as much as we have in Canada, you've got 2 kind of schools of thought. The first one is the fans who say, I'll cheer for any Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup. It's good for the economy. It's good for that even though that community can be 2,000 miles away, It's good for them, but then you have the other school of thought, which is if my team doesn't win, I like a lot of my friends who are Calgary Flames fans, the worst thing in the world that could happen would be the Oilers, the Canucks win the Stanley Cup. People seem to like the Winnipeg Jets and the Ottawa Senators because they kind of feel sorry for them. They're small market teams,
Nobody wants to kick a sick dog, right?
Right. So I think that in Canada, the fan base is split between we hate every other Canadian team, we don't want them to win, and we want any Canadian team to win, versus let's beat the Americans and the Russians in the Olympics, if the Russians are there. And of course, the Czechs and the Swedes and the Finns and all that too.
Well, the good news for you is we're American fatalists, so we just assume we'll blow it no matter how favored we are. So
I would bet, if I'm betting, and I'm not, but if I were a betting man, I'd be betting on the Americans to win gold at the Olympics, not the Canadians. It pains me to say it, but it's just I see that as a pragmatic outlook.
All right. Well, thank you for humoring me and Ask the Oracle. I literally could do that for like 10 hours. You would quit the show before I want to stop. So I'm going to force myself to move on because we do have a lot of other stuff to get to. But before I do that, a real quick reminder that Slab Sharks is a Gong Show partner and sponsor. Of course, we're super grateful to them for their support. And just remember, the current Slab Sharks Weekly eBay auction ends tonight. Be sure to head to slabsharks.com, find the next cards in your collection, place your bids. If you miss the end of this one, not a big deal. Once one auction ends, the next one begins. Also, if you're a Canadian hockey cards collector like Jeremy Lee and are hoping for an easy way to sell your cards and maximize the eyeballs you get on your listings, we'd recommend checking out Slab Sharks eBay consignment services. They basically do all the work. From everything from taking professional photos, completing the listings, answering questions about your cards, hunting down payment, shipping cards to winners in both Canada and the US, then handle any post-sale issues. By far, Jeremy, my least favorite part of being a hockey card collector is shipping cards between Canada and the US. It's stress and expensive, and I hate it. So that's a very nice part of their service. There's no guarantees in life, of course, but we consistently hear from people that are very happy with the amount of eyeballs that they get on their Slab Sharks listings. Lots of collectors visit their weekly auctions each week. Remember also, there's a 98% payout rate on all Connor Bedard cards through June 1st. That's why we call it Bedard Sharks right now, because there's lots in there. And then lastly, be sure to check out slabsharks.com for complete consignment information and to start consigning your cards with them today. All right. Rookie deep dive. I'm just going to say right off the bat, Jeremy, I thought it was going to work out perfect for a minute. We were going to have a Calgary Flame in Rookie Deep Dive, but we'll get into that in a second. So we're back with another edition of Rookie Deep Dive, getting close to the end of our quest to really learn anything and everything we can about 2023-24 rookies through Series 2. Part of our idea here is, these sets come out and we see Zach Benson Young Gun selling for $20. It's like, well, who is this guy? Right. Well, let's kind of try to learn ourselves and help everyone else learn about him too. So what we do each week is we put 4 candidates up on an Instagram poll, give you guys the opportunity to vote and to let us know which rookie you want to learn more about. We've covered a lot of them so far to date, a huge list of the 2023-24 rookies. If Troy was here to drive him crazy, I would run through them all, but I'm not going to do that with Jeremy. Our last one was the Toronto Maple Leafs rookie, Bobby McMahon, who's scored a bunch of goals since we talked about him. So maybe we're good luck in that respect. Well, this week, put up 4 candidates. Will Cooley, Keven Korchinski, Connor Zary from Jeremy's Calgary Flames, and Tyson Forrester from the Philadelphia Flyers. And Jeremy, this is by far the closest ever Rookie Deep Dive vote. I think we had 300 some votes, and Keven Korchinski won by 1 vote over Connor. Like I said, I was kind of wondering if it'd be Connor Zary, and I'm sure as you watch a lot of Flames games, would it been able to give some good context there. But maybe that'll have to be a future deep dive. So this week's Rookie Deep Dive, of course, is the Chicago Blackhawks young defenseman Keven Korchinski. You familiar with him at all?
No.
All right. Well, I wasn't either. Too much. So we'll get to learn a little bit about him then. He's 19 years old, 6'2", so pretty good size for a hockey player. Jeremy hails from wherever hockey player seems to come from these days, Saskatchewan? How do I say it?
I'm so glad I'm here to help you guys with your pronunciation.
Saskatoon. There we go.
There you go.
Holy cow. What's in the water there? Because literally, I think the last 3 or 4 players we've profiled have been from there.
Well, there's growth hormone in the water there. Yeah. And, the hockey IQ gene flows through the pipes in Saskatchewan, making its way into their drinking water. But, you're right. There are great players from Saskatchewan. There's several. Gordie Howe is from Saskatchewan. Patrick Marleau is from Saskatchewan. Brian Trottier, Bernie Federko, Theron Fleury, Getzlaff, Eberle, Wendell Clark, Jaden Schwartz of the Seattle Kraken, and from my Calgary Flames, who didn't make the Rookie Deep Dive tonight. Even Connor Zary is from Saskatchewan. So I don't know what they're putting in the water there, but they do breed their fair share of NHLers.
I want to talk about Theo Fleury more on our show someday. I feel like I don't know. I just remember him, watching him as a kid, being amazed by him. And obviously there's a lot that went on, a lot of really icky stuff outside of the game too, but yeah, it seems like a little bit forgotten in my mind. But we're here to talk about Keven Korchinski. So before we get into his background, I've noticed this before, but it's really evident in this case. You got to give out to NHL.com, if their player stat pages. So if you ever want to, and a lot of people do this, you just search Keven Korchinski stats on Google, and it'll pull up a number of sites. I typically go to NHL.com, and the default there is their NHL stats. Well, there's a drop down, Jeremy. You can change it to all leagues, and it blows my mind all the time how far they go back. And I'll give you this is an honest to God example for Keven Korchinski. It goes all the way back to 2013-14 with the Saskatchewan Junior Pats, where he had 2 goals in 6 games at the Brick Invitational when he was 9 years old.
9 years old. Wow.
I don't know what you take away out of how, the point production as a 9-year-old, but it is kind of amazing that they have found a way to incorporate stats going back that far. So just had to give NHL.com a little bit of a shout out there. Okay, so we know he played youth hockey. He was good enough to be picked 10th overall by the time he got a little bit older by the Seattle Thunderbirds in the 2019 WHL Bantam draft. Do you follow the CHL closely at all? Do you have a team that, or not at all?
No, I used to I followed it closer, into the 90s when I was more into the prospecting and really looking forward, back when we were seeing the rookie cards come out, the early Upper Deck series. But now, no, I don't follow it at all. I haven't even really been watching the World Juniors the last few years, which I should be, because that's where we see the draft picks coming from the following season. So I'd like to get back into watching that at least. I'll start there.
So Korchinski basically hit the WHL during the 2020-21 COVID season. And that's one thing too that could merit a whole bigger conversation, is that a lot of these young players right now that are the future kind of foundation of the league have had to start their professional careers in extraordinarily difficult circumstances, and have had a lot to overcome in that regard. And Korchinski was one of them. What's interesting regarding to the WHL is that in 2021-22, then he was still considered a rookie because I guess they gave people a pass due to the shortened COVID season the year before. And that season, so again in 2021-22, he had 4 goals, 61 assists for 65 points in 67 regular season games. And again, he's a defenseman, led all WHL rookies in assists. And then after that season, he was it was his draft eligible year, and so coming into that 2022 NHL entry draft, he was considered a top prospect, especially as an offensively skilled defenseman. A lot of times when we do these rookie deep dives, we'll look up. There's come some of the excerpts from scouting reports, and Last Word on Sports had this to say about him before the draft. They said Korchinski is a dynamic playmaker who loves to push pace. He marries his strong skating with excellent puck handling skills. This allows him to make plays while moving at top speed. Korchinski can skate the puck out of the zone. He can also lead the rush and generate efficient zone entries. So I've watched him play a little bit, especially with Bedard and just the curiosity there. And he is really fast on the defensive end. And you can definitely see that when you watch him play. According to most scouts, is really more the defensive side is where he needs work. And then stylistically, man, the last thing I'd ever want to do as a scout is do the comparison thing. I don't know how they do this, but they said that again, stylistically, they would compare him to Erik Karlsson, whatever that means. No idea.
Heavy praise right there.
Yeah, no kidding. So we know this past season or summer, the Blackhawks with the first pick took our boy Bedsy, Connor Bedard, but the year before they had the 7th pick, and that's where they selected Keven Korchinski. So a very high draft pick. There's only 2 defensemen selected ahead of him, Simon Nemec from the Devils and then David Jiricek from the Blue Jackets. The couple notable players selected after Korchinski were Matthew Savoy, who can't seem to make well, I know he's played a few games with Buffalo now, but he's kind of a bigger name that really hasn't established a footing in the NHL yet. And then the very or thought well of Ducks rookie Pavel Mintyukov was selected after Korchinski as well. After the draft, then Korchinski returned to the Thunderbirds last season, which ended up being his last WHL season, scored 11 goals, added 62 assists for 73 points. He was named to the CHL's 3rd All-Star team, and then he helped his Seattle Thunderbirds team to the league championship in the WHL, and then all the way to the Memorial Cup finals. So must have been a pretty good team there. Following last year with the Thunderbirds, this past summer, he signed his 3-year NHL entry contract with the Blackhawks and was invited to, of course, a very exciting trading camp with lots of eyes on it. And then alongside Bedard, he stuck with the Blackhawks for the season, which becomes a big decision when you're talking about 18 and 19-year-olds because they're not eligible to go back to juniors, or to the AHL. And so the team really has to decide to kind of roll with the punches that you're going to get with a really young player. And I think anything you read about Korchinski, Jeremy, is that at times he's looked really good. At times he's looked pretty bad. There was a week or two ago, he was on the ice for 5 goals in a game, which is not good as a defenseman. But then he's also had some really good, offensive games as well. He's had to deal with his father passed away in December. So here you are, a very young rookie, your first year in the league. You've got a huge spotlight because of Connor Bedard. Your father passes away, and so more challenges for him to deal with as well. But I read a lot of articles, and it seems like overall the you can kind of learn to read between the lines in this stuff and reading quotes, and it feels like that the Blackhawks, from the general manager to Richardson, the coach, are fairly complimentary of him and believe that he has a bright future in the league. On the season, Korchinski has 5 goals, 8 assists for 13 points in 65 games played, and is a minus 34, which is not pretty. lot of numbers like that. I think Bedard is in some like the negative 30 as well too, and they're just not a very good team. But I think the hope here is that when you look at building blocks, and I think that's how you have to look at Chicago as a Blackhawks fan, is okay, is this a guy that can be kind of a foundational guy on the blue line, a trusted, can grow into being a top tier, pairing player, and be part of a core group that they can build around Connor Bedard.
Sounds like he is. I mean, and I don't ever get too concerned about a plus minus ranking for a player, even being on the ice for 5 goals. Yeah, it's not a good feeling for a player, but he's not out there alone. Doesn't mean he made any mistakes. You'd have to watch each of those or that whole game to get an understanding of how bad or average or just okay he was in that game. But when you're in the bottom of the league, you're going, the plus minus, that's a team stat in my opinion, more than anything. So, you could play the best game and your goalie could have 5 flukes going against him, and you're going to get minuses, and you had nothing to do with it. So,
I agree.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So Keven Korchinski is a 2023-24 Series 2 Young Guns. Currently selling about the $5 raw range. So you can get them sometimes as low as 3 and sometimes as high as 7. So pretty much averaging it out to 5. If you look at his top sale to date, a high gloss out of 10 has already sold for about $382 US. So nothing too crazy there. Again, one of these, a lot of promise. He's one thing I failed to mention too, right? He's the youngest defenseman in the NHL
That's cool.
currently. So
Yeah.
should have a lot of time. All right. That is our Keven Korchinski rookie deep dive. And now, Jeremy, it's time for Hobby News. I say it like an idiot.
Hobby News.
Hobby News. Okay.
I get a kick out of that every time I hear you say it on your show.
Well, we've been tracking what we call the road to infinity. And another big step forward again this show. What we've been doing is tracking what looks like to be the meteoric rise of the 2023-24 Upper Deck Connor Bedard base Young Guns PSA 10 pop count. On Monday's show, his PSA 10 pop count took a dramatic rise up over 200 in 4 days to 337. And now, Jeremy, just 3 days later on the road to infinity, we've crossed the 400 mark. Currently, as of today, at 405 PSA 10s. That's plus 68 in 3 days. We're 21 days since release date, and we already have 405 PSA 10s, which that's pretty incredible, right? Because all these have to be expressed, don't they?
I suppose so. I mean, they're turning them around pretty quick. Product just came out. Yeah.
852 have now been graded in 21 days total. The gem rate dropped a little bit. So it's under 50% for the first time. It's at 48%. We'll kind of keep tracking where that goes. That's a number of people this question, but I'm going to ask you again it too. Ultimately, do you think this card is will have the most PSA 10s ever of any hockey card?
Oh yeah, easily. I think the total pop count is going to be the highest of any Young Gun we've ever seen. So
do you think it'll be, if not one of the most graded cards by PSA in 2024?
I think so. I mean, I don't really keep that close attention to the gem rate data from gemrate.com, and I don't really pay much attention to the most graded cards, mostly because I'm not buying or collecting or interested in those cards.
Yeah.
But I think I'm keeping an eye on the Bedard because I find it fascinating, and he's a big deal in our segment of the hobby here right now. So, to answer your question, yes, I think it'll be one of the most graded cards of the year. I think the Wembanyama will be up there as well. And so, yeah. I mean, Bedard is putting hockey on the map, more so than has ever been. And I think that's a good thing. And I do think that there will be no shortage of them. And I'm kind of curious why the gem rate is under 50% on such a modern card. When you mentioned, I thought, wow, there's already 80 more PSA 10 Bedards in a month than there are Michael Jordan 86 Fleers, which was probably produced in similar quantities. I mean, there's no shortage of that stuff out there, and they've only been able to produce 320 something in 40 years. So it sure happened fast. So your road to infinity is a very astute name for this particular watch that you guys are doing on the Gong Show.
Well, 48% is very high for the last few years. So you look at like Trevor Zegras, I think is 27 or 28%.
Okay.
Matt Boldy is less than 30%. Cole Caulfield is in the low 30s. Really high 20s, low 30s, going back to 2021. Well, no, 2022. So 2022 and 23 sets. Ever since Upper Deck moved to Italy, have had much lower gem rates for their flagship printing. Because I believe
Interesting.
2021 Series 2 was the last flagship printed in the United States, if my memory serves me correct.
Well, and that kind of makes sense to me, because if they're still printing, and I didn't know that they were printing like flagship in Italy, but if they are, and along with other products, maybe that Italian vendor is figuring out and making tweaks to their system to improve the quality, and that's
Yeah.
why we're getting over 50 or around 50%. I thought that sounded low to me, Josh, but I just, I don't retain those numbers in my head too well.
Do you think that the Bedard Young Guns PSA 10 is an investable card in your opinion? Or I mean, how do you categorize that card? Is it a card that you think anyone should count on the value going up, or I don't know.
I So first of all, it's a commodity card. So
Mhm.
it's going to be very volatile. It's a, the question you asked me, do I think it's, I don't know how you said it. Do you think it's investable or that kind of, well, I think it's a perfect card for the day traders. Day traders are investing. They're just investing on a
Mhm.
very short horizon, sometimes seconds in the world of
Yeah.
stock, but in the world of sports cards, you can't really turn them over that fast. So, I think it's a good card for people to day trade, within sports, could do the sports card version of day trading with it. Yeah. Is it investable long term? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I just don't think so.
Mhm.
Just having, watching Young Guns for so long, and with the production being as high as I believe it will be, and just, it just makes sense that there's going to be more of these than there were Austin Matthews, and more of these than there were Connor McDavid's, and for sure more of these than there were Crosby's and Ovechkin's. And if he's the next guy in that line of talent, then with the production being as high as we think it is at Upper Deck, between hobby, retail, and EPAC, I don't see it being an investable card, like long term. I don't think you're going to, unless you buy one at its absolute low over the next, say, 24 months, because he gets hurt, or he maybe he has a bit of a sophomore slump next year. I doubt it, but maybe he does. And then in the offseason, his cards reach an all-time low. That might be the right time to buy it, because he will get hot. But the trick with some of these commodity card, ultra modern commodity cards, is if you're considering them investment, you have to be nimble enough to dispose of them, to sell them at the right time. And you have to be quick, because everyone's going to be like, there's a lot of people that will be watching for that to happen. And then as soon as he gets hot and people sell, well, it's just going to draw. No, it's just supply and demand at that point. Price will come down again, no matter what happens. If Patrick Mahomes, just to switch to football, if Patrick Mahomes rookie cards can go down in value after he wins a Super Bowl, I mean, that's a sign of quantity and production. That's not a sign of Patrick Mahomes. So I don't think it's investable.
I agree with you, and I try to, like, when I think of like investing and commodity cards, I think is a great way to put it. Is I do corollaries to like the stock market, and it's like the shares people are like, there's a lot of commentary right now. Look how much it's already tanking, but the shares outstanding have tripled in the past week, right? So it's
Well,
like, and they're gonna,
we knew that was coming. So the people who bought the first 100 Young Guns, Bedard Young Guns on eBay, they either just, they just can't resist. They have to get
yeah,
it right away, or they just haven't been watching the hobby for very long. And that's probably the case. It brought a lot of
sure.
people. I've had more phone calls from people that I haven't heard from in a long time, just asking me about the Bedard Young Gun or when it's coming out, than I have in, since McDavid came into the had his rookie card. So yeah,
Uh,
it's going to be a bloodbath, I think, for a lot of people who are buying them at these early prices.
Are you going to move on? Saw an interesting story today. A tweet from Darren Rovell. I think it was today or yesterday, something like that. is apparently launching. I don't know if it's really a secret. I think he's hinted at it for a little bit now. A collectibles media site or network. Um, Again, I come from with a name that I don't think anybody can pronounce. I don't know if is it clicked or it's obviously collect with all the vowels removed, but then I don't when you remove all the vowels from a word, I don't know how you say it. So very interesting branding choice there.
It's like,
But
yeah.
do you know what it's how to pronounce it?
I mean, I think they'll want to pronounce it collect. I think it's like
Okay.
I think it's kind of like a ticker symbol or a license plate, where you don't have all
Okay.
the room. So you come up. I think they're going to want to pronounce it collect. It's either that or CLLCT. Which who wants to say, oh, did you look at CLLCT today? That just takes too long. 5
Yeah.
letters to say out one at a time. Um, I'm not going to get too hung up on what they called it, but I do agree with what I'm hearing is that it's just a bad name. I don't think it's a great name, but I don't really care what they name it.
Sure.
I'm more interested in the meat of what they're going to be doing, and I'll be honest, I actually think I'm bullish on it because I don't know Darren Rovell that well. I've only met him once. We've DM'd a couple times. I don't know him too well at all. So I don't want to make it like that. But from what I do know of him, he takes his journalistic endeavors very seriously. I I would hope that him and his team at Collect are going to do it with the highest level of integrity and
Yep.
without bias. Uh, that's my hope. That's my just like I had that same hope with when Fanatics got the licenses, and when PSA or Collectors acquires uh, SGC. I'm always going to hope for the best, but I'm also not that naive to know that not everything's going to work out for the best. So I'm excited to watch what happens with this, and I hope that they do a great job. I think the hobby could use an elevated level of journalism within. I
Yep.
think we're the hobby is ready for that.
I have a couple reasons why I think it's good too. But first, before I say that, I just for everyone listening, especially, want to read the announcement. So here's the announcement from Ravel. He says every week millions of dollars is being spent on collectibles and memorabilia, yet there hasn't been a real media outlet to cover this asset class that ends April 8th for collectors by collectors. And again, he's announcing the launch of Collect. It sounds like you can go look up that announcement on Twitter. So here's why I have two very specific reasons why I'm happy and excited about this and hopeful, just like you are, that it has a positive impact. I think it's a sign that again that the hobby is growing up a little bit and becoming, uh, you know, I don't know what the right term is for it, but that it's more of taken more seriously. That you have people that are, we've seen that too, like with with Fanatics coming in and even changes at like trade shows like the Expo or National, which are because more money's being invested in more of a corporate presence, more, um, even you're involved with Tag and they've kind of tried to up the game and sort of that regard too. And so again, I think it's just a good sign overall that shows the direction the hobby's moving. And then I want to be careful when I say this because I'm not never want to try to stir the pot or I guess judge other people for what they do. But I do. The last couple years have been personally sort of as I look at kind of hobby media, whatever that means. We've heard a lot of people talk about the importance of like hobby watchdogs, and I do think that there is an element of that's part of what journalism does is it holds sort of industries and governments and um, institutions accountable. But to this point, a lot of the most popular hobby watchdogs have been more like trolls, and that appeals to a lot of people, and a lot of people love it. It doesn't really appeal to me, right? And so where I would agree with you in taking a more journalistic approach is hopefully bringing that accountability to the key stakeholders of the hobby and um, being a watchdog, but more in not sort of a kind of mudslinging trollish sort of way. Does that make sense to you?
100% makes great sense. I think that I hope that this collect group, with Darren Rovell is looked at as an elevated. I hope it elevates the level of just the journalistic integrity. And the hobby, like you said, the hobby is matured. It needs this now. And what I was talking about before, when you asked me about the threats, what are the threats to the hobby? And I mentioned, things like counterfeits. Well, if we have a professional journalistic group covering the hobby, I think that would go a long way to bringing making law enforcement be more interested. Because if they're going to if Collect is going to be able to raise the bar such that some stories make it to national media, because these are professional journalists, not just YouTubers covering it, I think that's a potential really good benefit of it. And things like the FBI, who get involved in the hobby already, but maybe it'll shed some light, shine a light on certain problems that we're having, and cause them to get attention outside of just like YouTube and Instagram and Twitter, and maybe help push us towards fixing some of these issues, pushing the bad actors out. I don't know. But the flip side of that is, well, now are we going to put so much? There is negative stuff in our hobby, like even all the scamming that goes on. Yeah, we need to protect people. We need to educate so people know about it, so that they can not get caught and not be victims of these scams and frauds. But the other side of that is, well, now if it's going to go mainstream media, well, are we going to attract more people in when the news, the two different types of headlines that are really going to catch fire are fraud and record-breaking sales, which just pushes, which is, maybe they counterbalance each other, and we do have a steady increase in hobby participants. But I haven't really thought this one through, but this what I've just said is kind of like my beginning of it, and I think that's the direction that I'm going into as to how I think it's going to play out.
Well, it seems almost funny using the word journalism, because who knows to what extent that even still exists. But I'm going to stay there for a second. And as I'm listening to you talk, it's like a problem that came to my mind is the whole fake patch thing, where a lot of companies are still willing to profit over it, but nobody wants to step up and take accountability for it either. And if issues like that, if a media organization like Collect could shine a light and focus on that, it might, you know, create change and actually, have people, because it is a threat to, just like a fake autograph is, right? When we know that these, and you've been involved in trying to create awareness on fake patches too. So totally agree with you there. One more quick hobby news story, happy news. Pittsburgh fans can rejoice. The missing Jaromir Jagr bobbleheads have been rescued. I'm sure you've been struggling to sleep at night, Jeremy. It's been probably weighing on your heart, very heavy. Balance to the universe has been restored. So apparently, a special cargo delivery team, I'm just using the words, or recovery team from the Penguins. So I don't know if it's like CIA or Delta Force or whatever, negotiated the return of the stolen cargo last week near Ontario, California. So I don't know how, man, there must be a story there. Anyways, they're on their way to PPG Paints Arena, could be distributed at an upcoming home game as early as April 6th or 7th. Fans that didn't get one as originally scheduled were given a voucher on March 14th. Will be able to pick theirs up. So here's the main reason why I want to bring this up is I wanted to ask you the question, given the kind of crazy and now funny, but yet happy story around this, do you think from a collectability standpoint and a value standpoint that these will kind of have a bigger presence than they would have given this whole heist that occurred?
I mean, yes, I'm certain of it. And I listen, I don't collect bobbleheads, but the reason why I'm certain of it is because it's Jagr. He's
Sure.
got like league wide appeal, and because there's just so much attention. Like I've ignored this story. I don't care one. I feel bad for people that thought they were getting one and didn't, the kids, but otherwise I don't care about these bobbleheads whatsoever. But that said, there's more attention on them now. More people know they exist. More people are going to be going to eBay to look for them. And that is in increase in demand. I think there's no way that it's just it's good marketing. Good marketing increases demand. That increases value because more people want them. So, but is this a long-term thing? No, I think this is gonna. I think you're better off selling them right now than you are buying them.
I think if you could get it autoed somehow, that would be pretty epic. If you got him to sign it, you'd have to fly over to Czechia or wherever he is. But I don't know.
It's a funny story.
Okay, it's a hockey hobby trivia. I'm terrified. Give me a second to have a panic attack. Have not looked at the questions you're gonna ask. I swear to God, if I get one right, I'll be happy. But I'm gonna pass the mic to you and just let you embarrass me.
All right. So my first hobby trivia question, I have to admit, it's not so much hobby as much as it's hockey, but the tie-in is that, I know that on the Gong Show, you guys put a big focus on goal scoring, as do collectors and fans of the sport. Although, several times assists are a lot nicer than the goals, but that doesn't matter. Goal scoring does matter. I recognize that. So, and this ties into my hobby history too, Josh, as a youngster in the late 80s, one of my first, outside of collecting the regular issue O-Pee-Chee set every year, I started collecting the rookie cards of all the 1,000 point men in NHL history. Back in about 1988-89, I started this collection. And back then there were maybe 60, I think, if I remember correctly, players who were in that group. Now there's 98 of them. There's been 98 players in the history of the NHL to score 1,000 points. And this is a trivia question. I used to bartend I remember 1997. I was bartending at a restaurant bar in Winnipeg, and I used to ask this question at the bar to customers because it was a fun question. So now the question has changed. The answer's gotten longer, but the question is: of the 98 1,000 point men in the history of the NHL, only 8 of them had for their career more goals than assists. So 8 of them. So the question is, can you name all 8 of the 9? I know it's a tough question, and I don't expect, Josh, nobody really can get this unless you've looked at this specifically. So I bring this question to the table more for discussion and to educate and to just shine a light on this, because goals are important. So if goals are important and you're a 1,000 point man with more goals and assists, you're probably a Hall of Famer. You might be worthy of collecting if you like goals. So how many of them do you want? Do you want to take a shot at naming some of those 8 or go for all of them?
I know I can name 2, which is bad. I think I can name 3. So I'm going to start with the 2 I feel like I know for sure. Brett Hull.
Yep.
Ovechkin. Bobby Hull.
Yeah. One of my hints was going to be there's a father-son that both make the list. Bobby and Brett Hull both make the list. Yeah, you're right. So that's 3 of 8.
Okay. Bossy?
Yep.
Am I doing better than I thought I would?
You've got 4, so you're halfway there.
Oh boy. Come on. Who else? And so there's been 8. There's been I don't know.
So, okay, well, a couple of hints. So, one of them, I think, held the record for a long time until Ovechkin broke it, of most consecutive 30-goal seasons in the history of the NHL. He's a Hall of Famer. He had a great career. Started his career and with the Washington Capitals, and I believe ended it with the New York Rangers. His rookie card comes from the 1980-81 O-Pee-Chee set.
Mike Gardner,
you got it. Good
okay.
one. 3 more. The next one, the hint I'll give you is that he played for your Minnesota North Stars.
Oh no. Who?
It's not Brian Bellows.
Dino?
Yeah. Dino
Really?
Ciccarelli. 608 goals, 592 assists for 1,200 points in his career.
Okay,
there's 2 more. These ones are a bit tougher. One of them, his rookie card is from 1988, O-Pee-Chee. He won Rookie of the Year that year, in his rookie year. And he has a very long, difficult to spell last name. And his rookie card is with the Calgary Flames. He was traded to the Dallas Stars, I think straight up.
Joe Nieuwendyk?
For an untested player named Jerome McGinley. Yes, Joe Nieuwendyk is number 7.
Okay.
Number 8, I'm going to give you I'll give you a hint on number 8. I don't think you might get it, but number 8, he is a very proud father in the NHL right now. Very proud. He's got
Shane Doan.
No, good guess, but no. He's been proud for a few years now.
Okay.
Not just one day, not just 24 hours.
Papa Keith?
Who?
Keith Tkachuk?
Yeah, Keith Tkachuk.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. I would have never got that in a million years. 538
goals, 527 assists for 1,000. He's not in the Hall of Fame, but I think he could maybe get there one day. So, those are them.
What Troy brought up, I think, last week at some point, which is very closely related. This is an amazing question, by the way. I think Austin Matthews has a very good chance to become one of only 4 or 5 players ever this season to score 60 goals and not have 100 points.
That is crazy. Yeah. That's crazy.
Okay. All right. Well, I like that. And all right, question 2. Let's go.
All right. Question 2. There are 39 Hall of Famers whose rookie cards came out in the 80s. So sets from 80-81, tops are O-Pee-Chee, through 89-90, tops in O-Pee-Chee. 39 Hall of Fame rookie cards over 10 years, 10 card seasons. Which set or year from those 10 years produced the most Hall of Famers, and which year produced the least Hall of Famers? And then for bonus points, can you name them? These are tough questions, but it's fun discussion, so you don't have to feel.
Yeah.
I don't expect you to get them, but just think if you have the mental ability, which I do, and if you grew up, we open these packs.
Yeah.
I can easily picture each set and the rookies from each year. So again, which year produced the most?
like 1990 is when I really hit my wheelhouse in hockey, and so the 80s are a little bit not as instinctive to me.
Well,
I feel like 87 was not a great year in the research I've done in cards, and so that would be my guess for the least amount of Hall of Famers.
So 1980, it's not the right answer for least. 1987 had 3 Hall of Famers in the set that year. In 87, you're looking at Adam Oates, Luc Robitaille, and Mike Vernon, who was just elected in. So that year was at 2. The year, do you want to guess the most?
I'm going to guess the Yzerman rookie year, 84.
Close. That's number 2. That year had 7. It's 19. Can I tell you?
Yeah.
It's 1981. 1981. There are 7 Hall of Famers by the name. Do you want me to name them for you, or would you like to? Yeah. No. So you got Denny Savard, Dino Ciccarelli, Glenn Anderson, Yari Curry, Kevin Lowe, Larry Murphy, Paul Coffey, and Paul Stastny.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a great year. And the reason why I really like talking about this with you and your audience is because it just shows and I'll go through the years with you guys if we have some time. It puts into perspective what's going on now. Like how many players each year are going to be Hall of Famers, and of them, how many are we going to care about 35 years down the road?
Yeah.
Do we care about all Hall of Famers? All the players I just listed, do any of them have a ton of hobby love between Savard, Ciccarelli, Anderson, Curry, Lowe, Murphy, Coffey, Stastny? None of those guys are named Wayne Gretzky.
Mm-mm. But 7 in 1 year is incredible.
It's a lot.
Crazy.
That was 8. 1984 had 7. That's the Chelios, Andreychuk, Gilmore, LaFontaine, Yzerman, Neely, Barrasso year. But the year that had the least is actually, I believe that was 1980. Let me just make sure here. I did have to confirm all this. 19. There's a year that had one Hall of Famer, and that one Hall of Famer was Patrick Waugh. 1986 has yielded one Hall of Famer when the whole decade had 39. So it just goes to show year over year, we watch the draft come out, we watch the young guns come out. There might be one Hall of Famer out of all those. There might be 7 or 8. But here's something crazy. 1990, the year that you started. So we could do the same question here for the 90s. I've got the data. In the 90s, so far we have 28 Hall of Famers.
Wow.
Half of them came from 1990, 13 came from 19.
Oh yeah, I mean, think about it. You got Jagr, Fedorov, Pavel Bure, Madonna, Niedermeyer, right?
Yeah.
Who are the goalies? Cujo, was he 90?
Yes, but he's not in the Hall of Fame yet.
He's not. Yeah, he should be. But who else? Oh,
there is one goalie.
I think of the World Junior sets, right, and all the cards. Lidstrom, was he 1990?
He's 91.
91. Okay.
The goalie.
Who did I forget?
The goalie is Ed Belfour. You've also got Eric Lindros. You've got Mark Recchi. You've got the Russian group. You got Larionov, Fetisov, Makarov, and Fedorov. You've got Rob Blake, Matt Sundin, Martin Brodeur, Mark Recchi, I think I said. So, yeah, you've got 13 that year in 1990. 1991, you've got 4. You've got Solani, Hasek, Forsberg, and Lidstrom. The next year, 1992, we've got Pronger, Correa, and Zubov. 1993, there's nobody. 1994, there's Jerome McGinley, one player. 1995, one. Daniel Alfredson. Nobody in 1996. 97, you've got the Sedin twins, Marian Hossa, and Roberto Luongo. 1998, Martin St. Louis. And 1999, it doesn't count. I don't count this one because it's Tretiak, who had a UD retro card, but I don't count that. So really, it's 0 in 99 as well. So
that's incredible. I know Timu is your favorite player of all time, and just mentioning him, we followed rookies now for the past really 3 rookie classes, and then just studying before. I'm sure it'll happen at some point, but it feels inconceivable for a rookie to score as many goals as he did in his rookie year.
I mean, Austin Matthews is having an all-time year here over in the last 30 years, and he's not going to score as many goals as Solani scored in 1992-93, 76 goals. He's hoping we hope he hits 70. Never mind the best goal scorer in the league right now. Never mind a rookie. How about if the best goal scorer in the league isn't going to do it?
I firmly believe, is it the Glenn Hall, where he started 500 consecutive games or 700 or something ridiculous like that? Am I right? Is he the one that owns the goalie with the most consecutive game streak?
So I think so.
To me, that's the one record that just can't ever be, will never be broken.
Well, no one's even going to break 10% of that.
Yeah.
It's never happening again.
All right,
my final question. And it's in the same theme of Hall of Fame. So this one, I hope you get it, but I'm not going to give you the answer to this one unless you ask me for it. Final question on trivia is, so far, there has only been one Hall of Fame player whose rookie card was released in this century. Only one player post. Wait a second. Let me just make sure that holds true. Okay, this is true outside of exceptions like the Tretiak thing and women in hockey. We've had some female Hall of Famers have their rookie card come out in this century. Otherwise, Hobie Baker doesn't count. I mean, he played, before 1950, so we're not going to count him having a card, nor are we going to count Valery Kharlamov, who played in the 70s for Russia, who didn't have an actual card come out till 2002.
Yeah.
Outside of them, modern day NHL players, only one player who is in the Hall of Fame had their rookie card come out post 1999. Can you guess, or do you know who that player might be?
I think I do.
Oh, I love it. Who? I think you know it too. No, he's eligible this year. for the first
Oh,
time. He's eligible
I
for
showed my
24.
Pavel Datsyuk limited logos that for
Yeah,
anyone listening. That wasn't a
nice.
bad guess, though, was it?
No, that was a. He's probably going to be the second one.
Okay.
So not a bad guess at all. Do you want to make a second guess, or do you want a hint?
Zetterberg?
No, Zetterberg. Zetterberg, I think, was first eligible last year. Didn't get in, but hopefully he gets in this year.
I at least I think I'm giving good guesses. I
You
mean,
are.
I'm proud of
You're giving,
myself for that.
Josh. You're giving the best guesses possible. You're just missing the guy.
Yeah, it's like, and then my mind goes to Fleury but obviously he's so plain, right? Because he's 2000. I'm trying to think of like who are the key guys around 2000 that would have had long careers, and so I don't want to delay it anymore. Put me out of
Well,
my
I'll do
misery.
the. Okay, okay. I'll give you the first hint. It's not the first hint. His rookie card was from the 05-06 season. His. Let me know when you want hint number 2.
I need hint number 2.
He was a goalie.
Oh, Roberto Luongo.
His rookie card is 1997.
Oh, it is. I put me out of my misery. This is
Henrik
embarrassing. Now.
Lundqvist. Henrik Lundqvist
Lundqvist.
is the answer.
Oh,
Yeah.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, those are great questions. And actually, I was terrified I was going to be completely embarrassed. And apparently, if you research hockey cards, basically 40 hours a week, for years you learn something. So maybe I know a little bit
Well,
more.
I can admit I mean I had to research this to number one come up with the question and have the answer. So I didn't have them, but it's also interesting. Just to follow that up, if we had,
Yeah,
so players that are eligible in 2024 for the very first time, there are, players who played at least 600 games. That's how the Hall of Fame kind of looks at it. There's about 15 players eligible for the first time, and I've only identified, in my opinion, 2 who I think, one who I think gets in for sure, and 2 who I think have an outside chance of getting in this year or even next year. So here are the list of players that are eligible: David Backes, Braden Coburn, Pavel Datsyuk, Jake Gardner, Carl Gunnarsson, Jussi Jokinen, Mikko Koivu, Patrick Marleau, Derek Roy, Bobby Ryan, Alexander Semin, Brandon Sutter, Shea Weber, and Travis Zajac. Now, out of that, for non-goalie, the goalies are Ryan Miller and Pekka Rinne. I think
ooh,
the only guy I think really gets in this year is Datsyuk, if he even gets in. Marleau and Weber are my next 2 choices from that list. And then for goalies, I could see both Miller and Rinne. I can see Miller
yeah.
getting in.
Miller's a big deal from a USA goalie
Yeah.
perspective, and
And a
Pekka,
Vezina.
yeah, and Vesna, they're too. So what's interesting to me about that is take a guy like Datsyuk, does, and I guess tying it back to the hobby, Hall of Fame mean anything? Do you think? I used to think Hall of Fame, like my guess, my perception was that it's a huge deal, right? That it's like a tipping point to some degree. And the more time that goes on now, I don't think it means much anymore. Am I wrong in that?
No, I mean, I think it means something. Does it mean as much in the hobby? Well, it does, because first of all, you've got the PSA set registry, people who collect Hall of Famers. It's such a collecting Hall of Famers, I think, is,
Sure.
if you're a rookie card collector and then you overlap that with collecting Hall of Famers, I think you're going to build a historical collection, something that does mean
Mhm.
something, because they're Hall of Famers. But some people just call it the Hall of Very Good, that kind of thing. So
Sure.
but we have other players who are eligible this year, non-first year eligible players, and I think McGillney, Jeremy Roenick, Curtis Joseph, as you mentioned, Andy Moog. I'm surprised he's not in there. I mean, he's got
Hmm.
cups and 372 wins. Chris Osgood and John
Yep.
Van Beesbrook are some other players that I could see getting in, but the list of players who aren't in is also pretty impressive. There's a lot of great players that aren't in, and it makes me think that the Hall of Fame is still something that is important.
Hmm. That was a lot of fun, and I give you a lot of credit because I've tried to do this at times. It's really hard to write trivia questions that are hard enough, but not too hard. It's like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? It's there a lot of times either they're too easy or they're impossible. And I think he did a really nice job of towing that line because they were not easy by any stretch, but I didn't feel like it was like lost from the beginning. So that was fun. We're going to have you on to do that again. But now, though, we're going to move to new product releases and something I'm actually kind of excited to do with you because not that this pushes you out of your comfort zone, but you're not like the biggest new product guy. You kind of stay in your lane, right? Which is a lot of vintage, collecting a lot of the goats from earlier this century. And we have another big 2023-24 set coming out. We went through the checklist last week, but since then, what Upper Deck often does is they'll release, like typically on Facebook, a gallery of, and that's really the first time we get to see photos of the actual cards. So when they do like their sell sheets when they promote their sets, like almost a year in advance when they come out, those are digitally renditions of what the cards will look like. And so I really love looking at the galleries to kind of get this is the flavor of what the actual cards will be, and you get a lot more pictures typically. So what I want to do for SB Game Use, which comes out next Wednesday, and obviously is a Bedard rookie set, so there's going to be a lot of attention to it, is run through some of the big cards that now we've actually get to see what they're going to look like and get your opinion on them. And even from the vantage point of you as a collector, not being the guy that jumps on every new release and opens up a lot of wax, if these are cards that maybe hit you in your hobby feels and something you would be interested in. And we're not going to beat around the bush, Jeremy. We're going to go right to the biggie right off the bat. This is a card, and we talked about it earlier in making the comparison to Fanatics and how Fanatics has incorporated patches from a baseball players and tops from their very first game. So Upper Deck put a special Bedard card. It's called the Bedard NHL Debut. It's a one set card set with a parallel, but it features a net cord from his very first game. And so my questions on this, and it's out of 35. There's a gold parallel that's out of 5, so it'll be much more scarce. Do you like this card? Is this a card that would appeal to you? Is it? Are you happy that Upper Deck has tried to kind of, in their own way, sort of seize upon the momentum and at least get something from Bedard's very first NHL game?
Yeah, I am. I think that's really cool. This is, to me, it's better than a event worn patch card or a rookie photo shoot sort of patch card because it came off the ice that he was on. Now that said, he wasn't the goalie. That wasn't part of his equipment. Like a goalie net is sort of part of their equipment. But it's cool that it was in the game that he played. I think that's really cool. Yeah. I mean, at first I was like, well, what does that really matter? It's almost like, okay, well, maybe they took a piece of wood from the opponent's bench in the first game he was on. But this is different. It's part of the game. And, he skated by that several times that day and maybe touched it. And maybe he shot a puck into it during the warm-ups and et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's pretty cool. I like that Upper Deck did this. I do. And I like the card. I do like the card. I think it looks nice.
It's nice looking.
Yeah.
Maybe less so the out of 35. Do you think the out of 5 goes for a big number, or does this go back to the whole it's impossible to predict any, like I can't even, you could tell me that the gold out of 5 is going to sell for 50,000. I'll be like, yeah, okay. You could tell me it's going to sell for 4,000 and I have no ability to predict how the hobby is going to react to this card.
Yeah, you're throwing out big numbers there. I mean, if this thing sells for over 1,000, I think I'll be like,
base Young Gun sells for 1,000. So you don't think this would sell for?
Well, it's not an RC, right? It's a rookie year parallel of an insert. It's not a card that everyone's going to go after. Yeah, I don't know what this sells for, but my initial instinct is if it sells for over $1,000, even though it's out of 5, probably will. It probably will because of Bedard Mania, but it's I think it's cool. It's nice. It's cool. It's not something that I would be investing in,
It's
or
something,
but
right?
I would
From his first,
collect it. I think it's a good card to collect. It's from his very first game.
yeah.
I mean, the only other thing you can get from his first game is maybe a piece of a ticket. And then again, that was someone else's ticket, if they even make tickets anymore. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool. I like it.
All right, next card. Very popular out of SP Game Used. Draft Day Marks. This card kind of gets to my well documented issues with the SP Game Use set in that it's actually a manufactured patch. I was very surprised when the first time I learned that because my assumption was that this would be at least worn like off the nameplate of a jersey, but they are very very popular. It is kind of a fun way to to collect and build out the name. So my first question to you is: Are you a draft day marks guy at all?
Nope.
No. What do you think it's going to cost to spell out? Because these go for big money
Yeah.
in a
You're
normal.
probably okay. So I don't like draft day marks personally. I just zero interest in them, never have been interested in them. But that's just me. A lot of people love these cards. If I ever acquire a collection and I've got some of these, they sell. People love these cards. So whether they want to spell their name or they just like you're getting the player's real autograph on the card, or at least on the surface of the card itself, the memorabilia in there. So yeah, I think it's a cool. I think they're okay. Sorry, what was the question?
I don't know. That's
Oh,
cause you makes me remember 30 seconds ago, which I can't.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, I have no interest in
Oh,
them.
what do you think it'll cost to spell out
Oh,
Bedard?
I think it'll cost, so 6 letters. I think you're probably going to be looking, and there's not a lot of these out there, so I think you're going to be 1,500 to 2 grand a card. So
Yeah.
10 to 12 grand to spell out the name with manufactured patches, but you'll have 6 of his autographs and 6 of his, rookie year cards that are
The one
popular.
thing that impresses me about this exact copy, if you're watching on YouTube, is one thing I typically also don't like about these. I'm not a big fan of autos on material
Yeah.
because the auto soaks in, but in this case, the auto looks very nice
Yeah, it does.
on the material. So that's a bonus, I guess, for this copy. Okay, here's an interesting one to me for a couple reasons. Here's a Gretzky purple 101 tag auto. So I've a couple questions about this. Are 101s that are sticker autos weird to you? Because they kind of are to me. I have a hard time wrapping my head around that.
I mean, I understand why they do it. So no,
Okay.
it's not weird. It's not weird to me for any of that reason. It's so no, it
Okay.
doesn't weird me out really.
And then I don't know if you noticed too, and again, I'm sorry if you're listening, but by the little there's a memorabilia window, and then the upper deck actually wrote tag what the memorabilia is by that. And I'm very that's a good thing in my opinion. I've never seen that before. And you would have more context than me, but I would love if they continued in a very subtle, not where it's like too much of a focal point, but actually spelling out what the memorabilia is. I'm in favor of wanted to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, they've done that before. Actually, I collect this set. I've been collecting it for years now, from 2014-15 masterpieces, where and it's filled with different types of memorabilia, stick, jerseys, even Kelly Lindbergh's sock. So, that's the card I'm showing my Martin
Okay.
Brodeur. And right beside it, you can see it says stick. So they put stick, or they
Oh,
put patch,
gotcha.
or they put leg pad, or sock for one player, I think. So they've done it before. I'm with you though. Love it. I love anything. At first, I thought they were trying to promote tag grading, but now I realize it's a laundry tag from a jersey, so that's what they're doing there. But just to be a little cheeky.
Okay, so now keeping on the theme, and I had noticed this on the checklist. So the next card I'm showing is a Lemieux Premium Auto out of 5. And I actually reached out to Billy at Upper Deck and said, "What does premium mean?" Because I haven't seen that before, and they're labeling the memorabilia again, and he basically meant it that it's a catch-all that they're using. So it could be a patch, it could be a stick, it could be a glove, or it could be, I guess, a tag. What they're considering premium memorabilia. I
Doesn't make
understand that it
sense.
gives them flexibility, but to me, it makes it seem very vague what it is, and I just don't love that. And so I wanted to see if you agree or disagree with that.
It's not in the same family as the word tag on another card from the same product. If you're gonna say tag here, why don't you say jersey there and patch there and stick there instead of using a totally different like nomenclature here? Like, how do you?
Mhm.
I don't know. It just tag and premium are not from the same family of descriptors of memorabilia embedded in a card. So I think it's inconsistent. I think it's a little sloppy, but maybe it'll make more sense to me and you and everyone else as time goes by and we really learn how they're using it. I hope that's the case. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt there, but my initial, when this is the first time I've seen this, Josh, is that it's not consistent with having the word tag on another card that looks the exact same, except it's got, it's from the same family of inserts. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay, next one is the Bedard Authentic Rookies 101 Auto. And I wanted to highlight this for a couple reasons. I have an opinion, and then there's a question on it. So they're using green as their 101 color for a number of sets within SP Game Use. And to me, that's kind of an interesting choice as opposed to going with like more traditional like black or gold. And just wanted, do you like, are you kind of a traditionalist? Do you think that 101s should sort of stick to that kind of color palette? Or are you okay with some sets being purple, some sets being green or orange or whatever they decide to go with?
I'm totally okay with it. And the reason is because I think each set should have its own unique identity and should not really be tied to any other set. I don't think just because, in the cup, the one of one base parallel was always was black. Sometimes it was even black stock inside the card if you looked at it on its edge. That to me doesn't mean that everything needs to be black. It doesn't mean I like, they have their PMGs are green out of 10, so are their emerald surges and platinum are green out of 10. So there's consistency there. I'm not against there being consistency between and among sets, but I don't think they need to be beholden to that. So I have no issue with this one of one card being green. If that's what they're doing with SP Game Use from this point forward, I love it. I have no problem with it at
Mhm.
all.
Okay, here's my opinion, and you can agree or disagree with it. We've talked a bunch about how every year there's more and more rookie cards for every player. There was 320 some Alex Ovechkin rookies, just under 1,000 Cole Caulfield rookies in 2021. We have to assume there'll be well over 1,000 Connor Bedard different rookies. If you hit this card, it's a huge hit. To me, the smart thing is to sell it.
Immediately.
Because this is not a 101 that will stand the test of time and be in the PWCC Premier Auction 5 years from now. Might not be right. It's not going to hold the same esteem as a Cup RPA or anything like that. And I just think that you could if I hit this card, I'm selling it right away. And that doesn't make it the right choice. It's just kind of I guess what my opinion is.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's not the gold outburst that has $1 million bounty on it, but
Mhm,
it's kind of a better card. It's got an autograph. The outburst doesn't. All what it has is the Young Guns branding on it.
mhm.
This is a one of one rookie year parallel or whatever it is, with an autograph. It is on sticker, so that's something to consider. But you mentioned the PWCC Premier Auction. This could be there one
Maybe.
day. It
Yeah.
could be, but the other thing is that uh, I'd need to see it in hand. Although I don't care that they use green, I don't consider it to be a very attractive card. To me, the
Yep.
green and I'm not often a fan of greens and reds together. There's no real color matchy stuff going on. It doesn't really, they don't look great together, but that's not the most important thing. The overall design, I think, is important. And I don't hate the design, but I also don't love it. It's
Mhm.
kind of cool. You've got two different pictures of him on the card. We don't see that very often anymore because it costs more money to use more pictures. So they use one picture, kind of the same one, in various places on a card. I like that they have two different pictures here. So yeah, I mean, is it going to stand the test of time? No, there will be more important one of ones to follow for sure.
Do you like his signature?
Nah, it's not. It's I.
Seems more
It does.
scribbly than like there's not enough like you get with like Sydney's or Wayne's. Like they're more defined.
Yeah, it kind of gets. I think it might get lost in the crowd. Even I mean, but that might change over time as we see it more and more. It gets imprinted in our brains. Like McDavid's autograph isn't beautiful either, but it looks good on cards. I wonder
Sure
if we'll
does.
feel the same way about this one. This one, it looks very scribbly. So
Mhm.
yeah, but at least there's something to it, right? It's not just a little check mark or something stupid like that.
You may be shocked to learn, Jeremy. There's other rookies in 2023 SP game use.
No.
Yeah, true. I bring so we're showing the Adam Fantilli authentic rookies. One of the things I think is unique about SP game use is that the base card is numbered to the player's jersey. I like that personally. I think it's kind of cool, and just want to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, I've been a fan of that from the beginning. I like it. I like those unique numbering conventions that have been used over the years. And in SP game use, they've been doing it for a long time there now. And in Synergy does something similar.
Yeah.
I like it. Yes, I do.
Okay, you're a big patch guy,
Yes.
and one thing SP game used has are so, in my opinion, some really nice patch cards. Are you a Supreme patches guy?
I I have about 15 of them in my personal collection.
Okay. So yeah, here's a Cole Caulfield, a very nice looking patch. I think they're cool. It's got the more the vertical kind of skinny patch, but really cool. And then there's some. Now we're getting into the to me the really interesting ones. What about a Tony Esposito Supreme Pads card like this with the I couldn't see the back. I'm hoping it's game used, but it's got a very old goalie where you got the ancient stitching, looks very worn leather. If I hit this card, and I know Tony Esposito doesn't drive Connor McDavid hobby type values, but I would be jumping up and down if I hit this card. Does this hit you
It's
in your hobby feels?
Yeah, it's so cool. I love it. I love that old leather. That's what these are the best cards I feel in SP game use are the Supreme, the various
Mm,
Supremes that they've been doing for several years now. And you know, they actually they remain pretty true to the design of the Supremes. You know, for the first couple years they were horizontal cards, and then
mhm.
they've been vertical, I think, ever since. Like last year's product, the patch window they're always long and narrow like this, but last year they were very rounded on the top and the
Yep.
bottom, right? This year they have more of a you know an asymmetrical pattern to them. I think I like this more than last year's design.
Mhm.
And like you said, this is an awesome card. These cards, I feel, and maybe I listen. This is just my collecting preference bias coming through, and maybe why I collect some of these Supreme cards is because they're awesome and they're under appreciated and I don't say undervalued. The market decides what values are, but they're under. I think there's room for them to be appreciated more for what they are. I mean, I think this is game used too, Josh, and I think that Tony Esposito used this in game or games in his career, and to me, that's just so cool.
I'm becoming a little bit more interested too in alternative memorabilia than patches. I don't like
Mhm.
all of it. Like the tags get a little gimmicky to me at times, but something like this is very. And then sort of along those lines, then we have Supreme gloves.
Yeah.
I'm interested. This isn't like the best memorabilia. It's not a really interesting piece of memorabilia,
Right. Yeah.
and so I'm trying not to judge the concept too harshly. But but if you had more going on as far and this is for Nikita Kucherov, then I think that I would be all about these cards too.
Yeah, it's still a cool card. It's a piece of his glove. It's you know, we've become so spoiled by multicolor interesting patches, but at the beginning of the time, the first jersey cards were almost all just one color, you know, basic mesh jersey pieces. Now we are so you know, the hobby is just we have such high standards for everything and this is a piece of game used glove. That should be enough. It's a piece of game used glove that he wore in probably more than one game.
Mhm.
Should be enough for collectors, but this card will, I'm sure, end up in a great collection. There's, you know, in a Kucherov collectors collection or a Tampa Bay Lightning collection or a Supreme collectors convention collection, and they'll be very happy with it. but maybe they'll upgrade it to a nicer patch or a nicer swatch if one comes available.
Will it sell for less dollars than points he has this year?
Yes. Nah.
That's sad. Yeah, it
Maybe.
will.
It probably will. Probably shouldn't, but it
Okay,
probably will.
now they start to get really interesting. So not the one after, I'm very, very excited to show you because I think
I can't
you're
wait.
really
I
gonna
haven't
like it.
seen these, so.
Okay, now I think Upper Deck is up in the game a little bit here. So here's a Cale Makar jersey logo patch from the 2022 Global Series. This is a 101, so it's a nice. What do you think of this card? Is it significant to you? Is it interesting? Is it gimmicky? Thoughts?
Well, it's not, I wouldn't call it significant to me. First of all, I like it. I think it's real. I think it's cool. I like that they're going with these, like the theme being the global series, like similar to the Bedard's debut game. You know, it's a specific moment in time. I think that's pretty cool. The patch itself, I don't love this patch. I'd rather it be from the logo, the chest logo, or a shoulder patch than words and letters. Words and letters like this inside a patch just don't do it for me. So
But it lets you know that it's from that event.
that's cool. That it's yeah. So if that's what, oh, it's okay. Sorry, it's the Global Series logo patch. It's a logo
So
patch
right
from
here on
that
the
global,
jersey, like
yeah,
where they had the
yeah. That is very cool. It would be cooler if I was at that game or, you know, saw him play with that. And I have to ask, what was the Global Series? Was that something that they played in Europe or something?
yeah.
I
It's
just
just
don't
at the beginning of the year they do like it was like a weekend. They
one of
send 4
those.
teams. It was in Finland. Okay,
Yeah.
so stick a pin in that. 'Cause now the next one, same theme, but Sidney Crosby Winter Classic.
Yeah. See, this one I like better.
I knew this is the one, and it's from the shoulder patch from the jersey there.
These are cool. Now that I've seen, can you go back to the Makar for a second?
Yeah.
Just to, yeah, I like these actually. I like them. Yeah.
Mhm.
I
I would
mean,
think if you're a Crosby collector, you would be very excited about this card.
they have meaning. They're you can point to the exact game, and I love when the patch
Is in
is
the photo?
pictured on the card.
Yes.
Come on, like
Yes.
this is kind of, they're kind of, in the last 3 minutes I've grown to really like these. These are kind of next level pieces. I think they're awesome.
Oh, I saw this one, and I'm like, I'm putting this one near the end because I want to kind of build up to it. Okay, now the last one, my guy Kaprizov. Again, I told you I don't know if the puck thing does it for me. I guess it's kind of cool, but definitely not as cool as like a Winter Classic patch. I don't know. What do you think about pucks as memorabilia and cards?
I mean, like you. I think it's really a cool idea to put game use puck into a card. That's cool. It's better than nothing there. It's really it's a conversation piece.
Yeah.
Right? Like you could show this to your friends, whatever, whoever comes over and say, this puck was in the All-Star game that in 2023. So, oh, that's really cool. Versus I don't know, an event worn jersey patch or something like that. So I think it's cool. That said, for me, there's nothing visually interesting about that memorabilia piece. The card is nice. I like the colors. I like the jersey he's wearing. It's nice. This is a card to me that is for someone will work on this set. Someone will like these and work on the set of the pucks, or it's for a Kaprizov collector or a Wild collector. But it's certainly not for me. Nothing I will collect, but I think it's neat. I like them. I think they made these nice. I think they look good outside of the bland puck.
Yeah, it does look good. Really important, I think, other than just some random game use puck, they were very overt in 2 places on the front of the card. They tell you that it's from the 2023 All-Star game. So to me, that is a good thing.
Yes.
The other thing I
agreed.
just have to point out, and sorry again if you're listening, but
the font
font on puck is wild. It's pretty crazy. So
I like it. I like that they did that. I mean, some people might look at it and think, oh, that's a weird font, but I like that they're shaking things up and being bold like that. Kudos. I was we started these off, I think, with those with the one or the Crosby or the Bedard. We started with the draft day marks, but when we saw the Bedard 1 of 1 sticker auto, I was kind of I don't know, but this product has worked its way into my good books as we've gone on in the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm actually. It's a love hate relationship I have. They have like the banner cards that are in the just the man. I just don't like the manufactured stuff. This is a what's challenging about these as a if you're going to open up boxes. It's going to be a $200 US box, a $300 Canadian box. It's 6 cards, and they have like they have like um your big hit could be a mascot memorabilia card, and some of that stuff is tough, but there are some big hit opportunities. Okay, got to move on. We're almost there, Jeremy. But I'm very excited for our PWCC weekly preview. Of course, they're a partner and sponsor of our show. Just want to let everyone know before we get into the weekly auction overview that there's over 5,400 cards to choose from in the PWCC fixed price marketplace, which you can access on pwccmarketplace.com. And in that fixed price, as I'm sure you know too, Jeremy, you can find the whole spectrum of hockey hobby cards from George Vezina rookies to Connor Bedard cards, and really at any price range. And then remember too, if you buy any of those cards in the fixed price marketplace or in the Premier Weekly, you can either have them sent to you, get them sent right directly to the vault. If you put them in the vault, they don't charge sales tax right away or shipping. So that's especially if you kind of want to move cards, it becomes a convenient way to do that. But the current PWCC weekly auction is live. And guess what? I do a weekly show with Jeremy Lee every probably 3 Sundays a month, most Sunday nights on Jeremy's YouTube channel, Sports Cards Live. Starts at 8:30 Central Time. We're going to do one this Sunday. We both hope to see you all there. We have a great time interacting with everyone in the chat. Kind of feels like a group of friends getting together now at this point because we have a lot of people that join us each week. So it's a big treat to have Jeremy as a co-host today as we do our weekly preview. We highlight our favorite vintage modern cards in the PWCC Weekly. We're going to start like we always do with the oldies but goodies, our favorite vintage cards. And I just could not pass up the opportunity to highlight one of the 1979-80 OPC Wayne Gretzky rookie PSA 8 to get Jeremy to do probably a brief, but a as only you can do Gretzky review here on our show. This one stands out a little bit because PWCC, Jeremy, gave it the exceptional eye appeal rating, which puts it in their opinion in the top 15% of all 1979 OPC Wayne Gretzky PSA 8s. And that's a pretty big pool. There's 809 on the PSA 8 pop count. So top 15% would put it, in their opinion, again, roughly in the top 120 copies of the card. And if you've never experienced Jeremy reviewing a Gretzky rookie, you are in for a treat. It never gets old, no matter how many times I've seen it. And before we get into it, Jeremy, well, we kind of already did already, so we'll just kind of get into the review. So I can make big or small. You direct me how you want me to, and we'll go into this 1979 OPC Wayne Gretzky PSA 8. How would you evaluate this specific copy?
So let's start by zooming out and have a look at the whole card just to gauge our initial thoughts on centering. I can, it does seem to have some tilt to it. If you look at the bottom left, if you look at the left side, the left border, yeah, narrower there. It gets wider as you go up, and then the opposite is happening on the right side. Which eye appeal level did they give this?
They gave it exceptional, so top 15%.
Right, you said that, yeah.
So is tilt, is that a big deal for you personally?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
For me, it's a big deal. I tilt, if it's really if a card has severe tilt, it can kind of make you feel dizzy. This definitely, it's a centering issue. I consider tilt to be a centering issue. If you can now zoom in at the top of the card and give us the whole thing if you can. So top right corner looks it's out of my view now, but yeah, top right corner looks good. A touch of white showing, same on the top left, but they're good. They're definitely 8s. I love the top edge. The top edge is beautiful. It's a very light, rough cut. As we come down, I'm only looking at corners and edges right now. We'll come back to the surface in a moment. Edges look great on both sides from this angle. Bottom edge looks really good too. And the bottom corners look good. I don't really have, even the top corners are good. everything's good about the corners and edges, in my opinion. They're not perfect, but this card is also not in a 10 holder. That bottom right corner, actually, can you go back to the bottom? The bottom right corner, I'm noticing now a bit better as I see it better. Yeah, there's an issue on the bottom left corner. So that's a weakness in the card, I would say. Now, if we look at the word Edmonton and the word Oilers, the one thing you'll notice is that the word Oilers is sitting lower. I believe that's feels like it's lower than the word Edmonton. Yep. Josh, are you seeing the same thing as I am there?
Yep, a little bit.
It's on a bit of a lower plane. So that's a registration issue. Tells me that the magenta and or the yellow plates were placed a little bit low. Can you scroll to the left so we can see the whole word Edmonton? Edmonton looks good. Sometimes those black letters are fading. They have some snow effect. So that looks good. I also like in this particular view right here, that border around the image of Gretzky, that white border in between two thin black lines, looks good right there. It looks good as you come down. But right over there on the right side, you can see a little bit of orangey yellow encroaching into the white. That's a registration issue. It's very common, but it's definitely happening there on that card. And it's causing us to see a bit of that shadow coming in to that border. Josh, can you scroll down now from there? Just kind of come down from, go back to the right. Okay, so we often see an issue where these black lines around the Oilers logo there and coming up the sides, coming up those two borders of the image, where there can be some white showing between the blue and the black. That's not happening here. So really good registration on the blues and the blacks here. And the oil drop, let's look at the oil drop now. It's actually really well placed. I think what I'm seeing is the magenta plate is placed almost perfectly, maybe a little bit low and a little to the right, but very nice. And the yellow plate, I think, is a bit more displaced than the magenta, but it doesn't cause much of an issue. It looks really good too. We noticed the registration issue, I think, more up on the word Oilers than we did down on the oil drop.
Yeah.
And then the last place I'm going to look right now, outside of looking for like fisheyes and other printing imperfections all over the surface of the card, is on the legs and the face. How blurry. Let's look at the face, Josh, if we can zoom right in on it. It's pretty good, actually. It's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's a very clear face. And now let's look at the legs, because the legs, if you always look at kind of the right side of his legs and look at what is his right leg and the left leg in our picture, and then look at the bottom of it, like along the inside of it, you see that yellow glow coming off it. That's the result of the same thing we saw in the oil drop, where there was a little bit of yellow hanging off the oil drop. We can see it quite clearly. It tells me that the magenta plate was actually placed very well, not perfect, but very well. The yellow plate is the issue on this card, but luckily that's the plate you want to have the issue, because it causes the least amount of issues for us. So my biggest problem, and really my only problem with this card, is the tilt. Otherwise, I think it's a wonderful copy. I wouldn't give it the E that PWCC did. I'd be more comfortable giving it the A for above average, because that tilt does throw me off, but I'm also a tilt snob and a registration snob. So, and snob, I'm not really a snob. Those are the things that are important to me on this card. So I think it's a great copy. It wouldn't be my choice for an 8 for me to own personally because of the tilt, but it's going to make someone very happy.
The crazy thing to me about tilt is I don't know if I ever noticed it until I heard you explain it. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about, could this be one of the more intricate cards ever? And I think maybe I'm glad that you and grateful that you did that, because it just shows people that there's a million things to look at on this card. And again, why it's almost seems like an impossibility that they're ever perfect. So last sale of a 1979 OPC Wayne Gretzky rookie PSA 8 was $13,200 US on March 23rd. All-time high, Jeremy, $50,400 US, which is wow, that's a lot of money. The one thing, though, that I want to point out about, and I think this applies to this card more than any other card in the entire hockey hobby, is you can't just look at the number on the holder for the value. There's we said like there's 800 some of the 809 PSA 8s. There's going to be some really super like holy cow, how is this not a 10 PSA 8s, and there's going to be some that you're surprised are not a PSA 4, and there's a lot of collectors are savvy to that, and they will pay a premium for the best of the best, and they will not be interested in the worst 8. And so more so than any other card, you have to value it based on the condition of the card and not just buy whatever number is on the holder. And I think that
Yeah,
that's really important on this card.
very important. I agree.
Okay, the next card you selected to highlight, and I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so this is a, you know, I was tasked as both Josh and Troy are tasked with coming up with, you know, a vintage and a modern, and there's some really nice vintage cards in the auction this week. But I wanted to just kind of use this as similar to what I did with trivia, kind of use it as an eye-opening opportunity to shine a light on a card that is in low grade. This is a so it's a 1952 Parkhurst Ted Lindsay. Ted Lindsay's a Hall of Famer, and 1952 Parkhurst is kind of a year of it's a set that's kind of a limbo set, and I like that about it. So let me go through my notes on this one. First of all, it's a second year card. I want to shine a light on a second year card because I love some second year cards. You know, it's an opportunity to own beautiful cards of great players at a fraction of the price than you're going to pay for their cards that are 1 year older from 1 year earlier. Obviously, rookie cards are all the rage in the hobby. They have been for 50 years, but don't be scared of a second year card. They're beautiful. They can be beautiful too. And I think this is a great example of that. Now, it's a limbo year. It's a transition year, 1952 Parkhurst, in terms of the size of the cards. These are bigger than the 51 52s, but they're smaller than the 53 54s. Parkhurst added more colors to the cards this year. If you guys have a chance, we don't have a picture of it, but go look at the 1952 Parkhurst Terry Sawchuk card and then compare that to his 51 Parkhurst rookie. These second year cards to me are superior to in aesthetics to the 51 Parkhurst, but the 51 Parkhurst are the more important rookie cards. But you can still also collect cards that aren't rookies. I do. I don't have the Lindsay, but I do have the Sawchuk, and I have the Gordie Howe second year from the same year. I love these second year cards. I like
probably the biggest difference between 1 year to the next. Like they almost look like they're a decade apart, 51 to 52.
I also love how Ted Lindsay looks on this card. He looks like a friendly, tough guy. From here, he looks friendly and jolly, but if you zoom in, he's got that tough guy nose. You know, Josh, can you just zoom in on his face for a moment, and you'll see how it's sort of hard to do on their site, I know, but he's got that. Like, look at, as you zoom in, you see, yeah, he looks friendly, but look at that nose. That's the nose of a tough guy right there. So, bit about Ted Lindsay. He played 17 seasons in the NHL from 1944 to 65. He was, get this, he was a tough guy. He was 5'8", 160 pounds, tiny by today's standards for any NHLer, yet he packed a punch and he racked up more penalty minutes than anyone else in his era. He played with Gordie Howe on a line called the production line, with the third man being Sid Abel. And in the 1949-1950 season, those three guys finished 1, 2, 3 in league scoring with Ted Lindsay being number 1. I thought that was pretty cool. He was a 9-time All-Star. He won Lord Stanley's Grail 4 times in 1950, 52, 54, and 55. And he finished his 1,068 regular season games with 851 points and 1,808 penalty minutes. He had another 96 points and 194 penalty minutes in his 133 playoff games. Now, while this card is a PSA 2, I think it looks nicer. I can see what might be some light creasing on the back of the card, but that's it. Outside from the counterclockwise tilt, in terms of the centering, that's what I noticed. There might be some creasing on the back, but when I looked at the front in the same region, I couldn't see them. Now, again, we're dealing with 2-dimensional images, so it's a PSA 2. The card is a population of 8 with 151 higher and a total pop of 165. So while it's at the bottom of the population report, it presents much nicer. And I think it should be able to be bought for a very modest price this Sunday by someone who's working on the 52 set or in need of this Hall of Famer for their for their set registry, or if you collect all-time great Red Wings, it's a great card to get into. It looks really nice. It looks much nicer than most twos. And it's just an overall, I think it's a beautiful card. I'm glad I got to shine some light on it here today.
That was great. Thank you. Yeah. When you sent it to me, I'm like, two? I spent a bunch of time just like, wow, the eye appeal of this card. It's not perfect, of course, but it's like, well, it looks a lot nicer than most twos that you see, where you expect like half a corner to be ripped off the card. So
yeah, and there was, if I just may quickly, Josh, there was another second year card I considered, but I wanted to do this one because I thought it just stood out more. But there's also a 1961 Stan Mikita, maybe a PSA 8, I think, in the auction. Awesome card. Like, guys, go take a look at that one if you remember. That's also a great second year card in the auction.
Okay, the last vintage card that we're going to profile is a 1960 Topps Jacques Plante PSA 8. At PSA 8, it's a pop 84, 26 graded higher. No PSA 10s, though, so all 26 are PSA 9. So, Jeremy, where does Jacques Plante fit in your pantheon of NHL's greatest goalies? Is he on your mount?
Yeah, so I divided up into really two eras for goalies. To me, you've got the Waugh, Brodeur, Hasek, Luongo, Fleury, kind of those five guys in the more modern days. And then you've got the Dryden and the Hall and of course, the Jacques Plante and the Johnny Bower. You've got a bunch of guys from that era. Jacques Plante, to me, is among the best and the most fun to collect and just the coolest. Sawchuk I didn't mention as well. But yeah, to me, Plante he's a top 10 all-time goaltender, and he's a top 5 of that earlier era.
It's a mid-career card. It's horizontal. So his rookie is the very iconic 1955-56 Parkhurst,
which is right there.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Painting of it on my wall.
One thing I've noticed in just kind of observing through our show and looking at a lot of vintage cards in the PWCC Weekly, he has a lot of horizontal cards.
I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's another horizontal card. It's got a very bold yellow background. The surface looks pretty good. I've heard Jeremy comment on this, and we kind of share the opinion that the white border is a little yellowed, kind of showing its age, but I think in a good way. If they're too crisply white, they just don't feel like they're whatever 80 years old at this point or something like that. So I really appreciate that about this card. Plante played in the NHL for more than 20 seasons. Just a 6-time Stanley Cup champion, only won the Vezina Trophy 7 times, Jeremy. And in fact, nobody's won the Vezina Trophy more than Jacques Plante. Dominic Hasek and Bill Durnan won the award each 6 times. He even won the Hart Memorial Trophy as the NHL MVP in 1962, where in the 1961-62 season, played all 70 games, which never happens anymore for the Canadiens, and finished 42-14-4 with a 2.37 goals against and a .923 save percentage. Is an innovator as well. One of the first goalies to skate behind the net to stick handle the puck. Also, I thought this was kind of weird and stuff that I like. The first goalie to raise his arm on icing calls. And he did that as a way to kind of keep the defenseman in the loop, what was happening with the play. And you think about that, how many millions of times now have goalies at every level of hockey raise their arm because Jacques Plante decided to do that at some point a heck of a long time ago. All-time high sale for 1960 Parker Jacques Plante PSA 8, $406 on January 15th of this year, so just a couple months ago. That was also the all-time high. Okay, we're going to switch over to modern real quick. Had to point out, pretty big card in this current PWCC Weekly auction. It's a 2019-20 Upper Deck Jack Hughes Young Guns exclusives PSA 10. We talk about all the time, his base Young Guns right now, we're tracking the road to affinity for Connor Bedard, is the second highest pop for a PSA 10 Young Guns, only behind Kirill Kaprizov. And so I look at this, if you're a Devils fan or Jack Hughes collector, as a very intriguing, given that fact that his base Young Guns pop count is so high. Of course, it's a Young Guns exclusive, so it's out of 100. And then you have the further scarcity of it being a PSA 10, and that's a pop 21. on his PSA 10. And I just think it's a nice looking card. I've always really liked the look of his Young Guns, and so yeah. I also think, Jeremy, that it's been the first 2 months of the year was like you thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be the biggest breakout season ever, and then the injuries kind of came back to Jack Hughes a little bit this year, and he's still very young, but actually I think his market took a little bit of a hit because of that. He just hasn't. He's played 56 games. Interestingly enough, he's averaging about the same point per game as he did last year when he had 43 goals and 99 points. He's just not going to play enough games to pile up the big numbers. And so, it's probably a decent time to, buy low, right? Sell high, like they say. And his market is nowhere. I mean, it's definitely elevated from a year or two ago, but compared to in the last 6 months, to me, it's probably a decent time to look at his cards. Now, I know you don't collect Young Guns base, but do you have any interest in exclusives or high gloss or anything like that?
I mean, I have way more interest in exclusives and high gloss than I do a base Young Gun. I don't own a single base Young Gun at all in any of my PC or even my trader box. Historically, I've always had a couple. I don't have any right now. I also don't think I have any high gloss or exclusives, but that's not by design, where no Young Guns is by design. So I think that, these are, I think, are very special and important cards, because Young Guns are the commodity card. They are the everyman's card in this, every man, every woman's card in our hobby, in the hockey hobby right now. But because they're commodity, because there's so many of them, I'm not interested in that. I want my cards. I want certain cards I own, or most cards I own, to have a little bit of exclusiveness, and no, exclusives fits right in. The name is perfect,
There you go.
So yeah, to me, they are, they're the leveled up Young Gun, and I think they're pretty cool. I do like them.
All-time high sale for a 2019-20 Jack Hughes Young Guns exclusives out of 100 PSA 10 was on January 14th. So again, just a couple months ago of this year, in the PWCC Weekly, when it sold for $3,600 US. That was also the most recent sale. So both all-time high, most recent. It'll be fun to see where this goes this Sunday, and we'll be watching it live. So we'll get a front row seat to that. Okay, Jeremy, you had the next modern card.
I just did some quick math on his season. If you were to extrapolate what he's done this season over an 82 game schedule, he's on pace for 101 points, 100-point season. So that's pretty darn good. Points per game. It's funny, in baseball, you look at ERA, right? ERA is for pitchers anyway. We don't have a similar real stat in hockey. Point per game, I think, is something that is overlooked and very important, and it can work against some.
Well, even basketball's points per game, right? Where in hockey, it's like statistically you're punished for not playing enough. So if a basketball player plays 60 games and averages 30 points a game, we're going to look at that as an amazing season. But if they only play 60 hockey games, it's tough to get over 100 points, and then that's looked at somewhat as a failure. So it's that's a very interesting point you made.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so my modern card was the one that we're looking at on the screen for those listening. It is a 2015 SP Authentic Marc-Andre Fleury limited auto patch. It's in a PSA 8 holder. The grade not as important to me, but this is, I have a couple of reasons for selecting this one. First of all, I love SP Authentic limited auto patches. They're always designed beautifully. They always feature on-card autos, and they have, the numbering varies by player importance. The best players are usually SSP'd out of 10. The next best are SP'd out of 25, while the commons, if you can call them that, are out of 100. For what they are, they're relatively affordable, and I consider them to be the most beautifully designed auto patches year over year of any product that Upper Deck makes. I really, really love them. I also selected the card because of the player. Marc-Andre Fleury recently became the second all-time winningest goalie in NHL history. He's always a happy-go-lucky guy, fun to watch and play the game. He has a strong collector base. And lastly, he's currently playing for the Gong Show's Minnesota Wild, where both Josh and Troy live. So I wanted tie that in if I could. He's pictured here on the Penguins. The patch is part of the Reebok patch from the jersey.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great picture of Marc-Andre Fleury here. It's numbered out of 25. I just think it's beautiful. The grade is kind of, I don't think grading these adds any value to them, but the non-hockey collectors that are making their way over to hockey do like most cards graded. I think they like them more than hockey collectors do. But in any event, that was my selection, and it's Marc-Andre Fleury. I mean, you can't go wrong with the flower.
Is he a great goalie, or has he been a really good goalie for a very long time?
I think he's great. I just love him. Listen.
Yeah.
He's
not the best personality ever.
He's got Stanley Cups. He has shown flashes of brilliance. He's got international competition. He's got longevity. But more than anything, he plays for all the right reasons, from what I can tell. He loves to play hockey and be in the dressing room and be around the fellas. And that's what you want. I mean, you want to, listen, my career has been as an accountant, and I used to have people on my teams telling me that they liked working on either for me, reporting into me, or on my teams, because I made it fun. If you can make your work fun, it doesn't matter what you do. I think Fleury takes that to the highest degree that we see amongst hockey players and goalies. It's evident in when you just see him being interviewed.
Love it. All right, the last card, I picked this because I think it's a great card, and I am 100% convinced this is a Jeremy Lee card with a bullet, and you're either going to reinforce how much I think I know you, or you're going to make me fall out of my chair. I had to go with the 2015 Fleer Showcase, Connor McDavid, Ultra Rookies, Violet Medallions out of 25 PSA 9. Do you like this card?
Yeah, I do like the card. I certainly do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'd never seen it before. So I didn't know that it existed. Have you seen one in person?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I've seen a McDavid, but I've definitely seen the Violet Medallions before. I've seen the Matthews, I think, from his year.
Are they pretty cool?
Yeah, they're very cool cards. Yeah.
It's a PSA 9, Pop is 2, no PSA 10s. Card is serial number 1. I mean, that's not merely meaningful to me, but some people like the bookend kind of thing, right? Either 1 or 25. One of 2 parallels to the Ultra Rookie set in 2015 Fleer Showcase. There's a base card of McDavid as well. There's 30 players on the Ultra Rookies checklist from that year in Showcase. So that would include other notable rookies like Jack Eichel, Artemi Panarin, Dylan Larkin, UC Saros, and Mikko Rantanen. There's a platinum medallion parallel out of 99, and this is the Violet medallion parallel, which is out of 25. I just think it's a really nice design card. It's got a real big rookies kind of marquee at the bottom. The background is a very wavy kind of liquid metal foil that has that violet hue to it, which in photos at least looks pretty good. And again, I always look at these like the Young Guns alternatives, and maybe I'm too reflexive in that nature, but you have 10,000 combined Gem Mint McDavid Young Guns between PSA and BGS, and then there's 25 of this card total. It's not a PSA 10, so it's not exactly apples to apples by any stretch, but I would rather have a PSA 9, I think, of this card than a PSA 10 base Young Guns, and that's just my collecting sensibility. And so
very sensible, Josh. Very sensible.
Got to throw in a McDavid regular season question. How do you view this regular season where he went from 65 goals to now sitting at 26? Still over, I mean, has like 91 assists though, and 117 points. It doesn't seem to be getting kind of hobby punished for, like, we look at Huberdeau, right? We call it the Huberdeauian drop in points, and or even last year, Matthews got judged pretty harshly for only scoring, just about 40 goals or something like that. Yeah. So is this just an aberration, do you think, with McDavid this year, or what do you make of it?
I think he passed the puck to Hyman a few more times this year.
51 goals or whatever.
I think he's elevating the players around him. I don't think it's a strike against him at all. I think that at the end of the day, he started slow this season. I remember saying to people, he'll be like in like the beginning of December, I said, by the end of December, he'll be leading the league in points. Well, I was wrong. Now he's 4 points out of first place in the league. He's behind Kucherov and McKinnon, are both sitting there with 123. He's got 119. I think he will have the most points by the end of the season. I hope he does. It doesn't bother me at all that his goal count has gone down. It shows me leadership. It shows me lack of selfishness. And they don't forget, they went on that 16 or 17 game winning streak. Winning is the most important thing to these players. Not the only player who wants to score goals more than winning right now might be Alex Ovechkin. Not even he probably wants to win more than he wants to score goals. So I think I actually going to look at that as from the like glass half full perspective and say that again, he's sharing the puck more. He's made the players around him better. Maybe, I think it's a great thing. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. I still think I want to see him win a Stanley Cup. That's the most important thing. And, but when I kind of jumped in, I said, very sensible decision, but yeah, this card is beautiful. It's out of 25 and there's, like you said, 10,000 young guns. To me, this card, it's a no brainer. This is a smarter purchase than a young gun, but, like, do young guns have 400 times the allure that this card does? I don't think so. And there's 400 times as many of them, and they're priced for more, so they should have 400 times the love, but they don't. So,
well, two quick more additional comments. We found after last season that Matthews was maybe a little more hurt than people thought, and you talked about McDavid starting slow. He was hurt, and to what degree he was hurt, maybe we don't know. And maybe that doesn't factor in it at all, but it's just, I think, something to keep in mind when kind of evaluating this season. And then you look at the value of this card, right? All-time high was a BGS 9.5 copy. I kind of tend to look at any copy raw or graded when it's less than 25. It doesn't make sense there's just not enough sales. So a BGS 9.5 in November 2021 sold for $3,954. Who knows what this will sell for today, but I'm just going to guess it's going to be pretty in the realm of a PSA 10 base Young Guns, and whoever buys this is going to be a genius in my mind.
Yeah, I could see it selling for around $2,000, which I think is less than a PSA 10 Young Guns, because I'm looking at what you just told me. You said that the all-time high BGS 9.5 did $3,950 in November of 2021. That was a much different time in the hobby. Things have come back in value since then.
Higher grade.
Yep. It was a higher grade by BGS, but the hobby's moved. Now, has a card like this kind of been able to avoid some of those other hobby forces that have been happening, like values coming down from since then? Maybe this is a $4,000 card in today, and not a $2,000 card, but it should be a $10,000 card. All else being equal, if we're just kind of taking a step back. And here's the thing: if you were to say to somebody who's not in the hobby, Josh, you say to them, and they come to your house and you're telling them about this card, you say, and you ask them, here's the Young Gun. There's 10,000 of these. It sells for $3,500. Here's this card. There's 25 of them. It's the last one sold for $1,827. Does that make sense to you? There's 25 of these and 10,000 of those. They're going to say, well, no, that doesn't make sense to me. So it to the outsider, it doesn't make sense. It makes sense to the insiders because young guns or.
But if you force me to invest with the goal of making money 5 years down the road, and I got to pick to buy either a base Young Guns or this card, I'm 100% going to this card. With everything you said was true, right? That there is the perceptive value of a base Young Guns is very high. Yes. I think though that this one is I would love to own this card just as a collector and cherish it forever and not care what it's worth. But this is the type of card that I could be wrong. Of course, I probably will be, but that I would, if I wanted to invest, that I would be looking at. So I just thought it was a really interesting card to point out. All right, we're at the part of the show where personal pickups you have a number that you want to share, and then I'll end with a couple of mine, and this marathon will be over.
Yeah, I did. So I do have a few. I'm going. So the first few I don't have in hand, so I maybe I won't even bother talking about them because they're actually sitting in they're in transit from ComC right now. But I'll tell you what they were. I picked up a 2012 limited logos Dale Howardchuk short SSP'd out of 10. It's actually my third copy of it, but it's the nicest one, so that might make one of my other ones
And
disposable.
he's one of your guys, right?
Yeah, he's one of my guys. If not, yeah, he's one of my guys. He's probably the guy I have the most cards of is Dale Howardchuk. And then I picked up 2 Zygmunt Palffy cards. For low print, I picked up his Donruss Priority Stamp of Approval, numbered out of 100, raw on ComC, 1997. I picked up his 03 Bowman Chrome Draft Picks and Prospects Gold Refractor, numbered out of 50. I just snapped those up because you don't see cards from the 90s like in that low print run very often. And then cards I actually have in hand. So I showed these on my Instagram recently, I think, but this is a cool one here. This is Devin Dubnyk, also of the Minnesota Wild. This is the 2016-17 Cup base patch parallel. I collect these Cup base patch parallels from all Cup years, going back to a 506. But this was the 400th card I received in my collection of those of that particular hoard that I have. This is card number 400. Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And it ties in, Josh, because he's a Minnesota Wild in this picture. And then I made a trade on Instagram that landed me these 2 beautiful cards. 0506 Cup tributes of Grant Fuhr and Joe Sakic. I collect these 0506 tributes, and I didn't even know Grant Fuhr existed. I've been chasing a Joe Sakic. And these came to me in a trade that I just made a few days ago. Or these came in a few days ago. So really happy with these 2. And then this guy also landed. We talked about Roberto Luongo earlier. This is from 2007 Upper Deck. This was a patch insert that year called Big Playmakers. They're out of 10. They also made a jersey out of 50 or 100. I forget which one. But these are the patches out of 10. And I've started to kind of pick these up. Now, it's a quad patch. There's 4 patch windows. One of them is really nice. The other 3 are kind of basic, 2 and 3 colors, but they're out of 10. That's pretty rare. I said earlier in the show, I'm not a big fan of green and reds together. So I'm not a huge fan of the aesthetic of this card, but I'm a big fan of Roberto Luongo. And it's one of the, you've got him pictured in the Canucks uniform, but they're Florida patches. I don't really care. I just, they're not breaking the bank type of cards. So I've got about 10 or so of these now in my Big Playmakers collection. And then finally, Josh, I wanted to point out that one of the best places to acquire cards for your PC can be from your own trader box. So I did that. I recently made these 3 cards personal collection. I'll start with the emblems of endorsement from 2017 of Pat LaFontaine, Hall of Famer, New York Islander. Beautiful card. Thank you. Legend. And he's like a great player. And then I made these 2 PC also. 2 of my favorite players from the 1980s. Michel Goulet on top. It's a 2012 limited logos, and Denny Savard on the bottom, a 2006 limited logos. Picked them up separately, and I picked this one up second. This came in second, I believe. Actually, don't remember which one came in newer, but either way, once I got the second of these cards, I realized, I got this in second. I realized I have the Savard too. And all through the 80s, these are my 2 favorite like non-Winnipeg Jet players. And so I'm like, they're limited. I'm going to put them in my PC, at least for a while. Happy to do that. And then finally, this card right here that came back in a trade also. It's got game used game used patches of Gretzky, Messier, Ron Francis, and Marcel Dion. That's on the front, but the back has Lemieux, Yzerman, and Sakic. So a really cool.
What brand card is that? Oh, SB Authentic, huh?
SB Game Used.
Or Game Used.
Yeah. A 7s patch. So although that last chunk weren't like new arrivals, they're new into my PC out of my like Expo showcases box. So yeah, those are my pickups, John.
Awesome show and tell there. Well, Jeremy, while you were carrying the show last Sunday on the PWCC Weekly, I had half my eye on the ball and half my eye on some cards. I did pick up a couple cards from, I was trying to be a little sneaky there. One of them is a 2020 Upper Deck employee exclusives. My guy Kirill Kaprizov, Precious Metal Gems, the purple. They're out of 250, PSA 8. I just really like the look of the card, and yeah, it's not. I'm not really interested in the value of it. I typically like my Kirill rookies in the reverse retro, like the North Stars colors.
Yeah.
But I just like, I'm a big fan of the purple PMG foiling. So I don't know how to pick it
Yeah.
up. And then
Awesome.
just on a flyer, I can't quit my guy Timmy Stutzla, even though he's had a little bit of a disappointing year. I love the Hot Shots inserts, and the way I've managed the kind of Upper Deck's tendency to go back to the well on a lot of these famous inserts is collect the firsts, and this is his
Mhm.
first hot shot, and so honestly, it cost me $6. So I just threw like a minimum bid, and I didn't even know I won. I was hunting the Kaprizov, and this was a pleasant surprise. And it's not, but for $6, I do like Stutza. I'll take this card all day long. So I consider that
Yeah.
a win.
No brainer. No brainer. And I like that approach. When they make the same design over and over again now, the first is kind of the way to go. It's especially if you like it, you know?
I have one exception to that, and I probably told you this before. The only exception I have to that is, and I don't have either of them, but I want them, is I would do the first Gretzky, Jambalaya, and Oilers, and then the first in the next one where he's in the Kings.
That makes sense to me.
To
Yeah,
me,
that's
um,
smart.
that's my exception. Well, we made
Yeah.
it. This has been a marathon. I'm terrified how long I've kept you on this show, but honestly, I could have done this for 3 times the amount of time. Nobody else would be listening, but just me. And I thank you so much. You're have been a great friend, and you've been so helpful. And if you ever need me to like shovel your driveway, I'm happy to come and do it. I'll
I
fly up to
do.
Calgary.
I
All
do.
right. If you like the episode, please leave a rating review on Apple, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you listen to us on. If you love the show, you want to support us, you want to chat with us on the Hockey Cards Gong Show Discord server, please consider a $5 a month donation. Join our $1.99 support level tier on Patreon. Link is in the show description. It's in our Instagram profile, TikTok profile, YouTube description, wherever you'll find it. We are on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. And Jeremy, the Hockey Cards Gong Show podcast is a production of Direbox Ventures LLC. Thank you all. Have an amazing weekend. Thank you, Jeremy. And we'll see you all again on Monday.